Good evening, everybody. We're going to go on and start our meeting now. It's close enough to 7 o'clock. I'd like to welcome you all. I think we've got enough guys up here to have a meeting. I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion second. There's a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion to approve last month's minutes.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any members' comments tonight? General comments? Okay, we'll go on and get started then. I think we'll start with the Colts Neck Underpass.
Good evening.
Hello, guys. How are you all tonight?
We are doing great. It's a lovely night.
Colts Neck, on software number counts, right there at the new development.
So I think I know everybody. Larry Butler with Reston Association.
I'm Anne Delaney with Public Art Reston.
And we are here to do just a quick informational presentation on a public art project. And the location of that project, you've probably all been there, Colts Neck Road Underpass, which is over adjacent to the Atlantic Realty Centara Assisted Living Facility that is nearing completion. I think it's supposed to open later this spring. One of the proper conditions they had was to do some improvements to the underpass and pathway system. We'll come back before you at a later date regarding pathway lights that I think I referenced when we talked about that last month. And what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to really let An talk mostly about the process, about the selection of the artist. And we'll be back in front of you with specifics. And this is just to kind of give you a, hey, gee whiz, it's coming. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to An to talk about the public art process. And most of you are familiar with this. I think she's going to go into a little more detail about the selection and that kind of stuff.
Good.
Yes. As we do usually for major public art projects, we write a call to artists, and the call was written in collaboration with Larry Butler. And really the call specifies, the goals, of course, description of the sites, the goals for the project, the timeline, the community engagement part of the project, as well as the budget. The committee, we have two committees reviewing artist proposals. One is the art selection committee formed of the partners in the project plus a professional artist. And then we have the Public Art Reston Public Art Committee also that provides input. We were, the call was really very, we got great response. We had over 35 artists who submitted their qualifications for this project. And the committee, after reviewing all of these selections of these proposals, selected the artist. And this is where I press this. Okay.
I can do it.
Okay. It's Ben Volta, who is an artist from Philadelphia and who has extensive experience with working with the community, but also with doing major public art projects. Has worked on several projects with Philadelphia Murals Program, which is a program that has been running for 40 years. And he has already been to Reston, visiting with the schools with whom we will hold workshops, and also the fellowship house, where we'll also involve the seniors in the process, and we will continue with the plans are that the work after coming to this to the RADRB will then, the plans is that the work will be fabricated over the summer with installation in consultation with the construction team at RA to be installed in the beginning of September. And what was important with this project, we came to you and we continue just showing you examples of his work and a process that he has refined in terms of making this work. It's not painted mural. There's a process, and it's the work is transferred on panels, and we will show you that when we'll come back later on in May, I believe. Mm-hmm. But there's a community engagement where he involves kids, and there's research and a theme. So this is just an example of one of his projects. And if you continue, Larry, He has been commissioned also to work with the New Jersey Transit System for this type of work, also Edge class, and just a couple of other examples of how he integrates, several designs to form one design, and you can keep going. Again, involving students and using computers, and this is another one. And you can continue, Larry. Again, with working with the different groups in the communities. And in this case, the kids were involved in the silk imprint making. And this is just a reminder of the Glade Drive underpass that we realized 9 years ago, the before and after, and we hope to come back to you to present the same outcome in a few months.
The only other thing I'd say, our involvement as having the responsibility for the maintenance of the underpass, so we've got our maintenance staff involved with the review of this as well. And so our concern is about the materials and how they're applied and can be pried off and all that kind of stuff. So that's really our focus, is the longevity of what gets put on. And the medium that Ben uses is really it's applied to what's it called, alumiplast, basically aluminum panels that are then would be fixed to the walls. And how far away from the walls, we don't want them flat because of the moisture and things like that. So there's a lot of those kind of details that we have yet to work out, but we'll discuss that in more detail once it gets a little further along. But we just want to give you a heads up that is coming down the pike, and Atlantic Realty and Centara, who's going to operate that facility, are all involved.
So we're not quite sure what it is yet.
No, not yet.
Okay. So even asking, would it be similar to the other one with the ceramics, or we just don't know?
We don't know. It
Okay,
wouldn't be
that's fine.
ceramic. I think that, Ben Volta has been here, he has done research, talked to a lot of people, and he's absorbing all this information to develop his design concept. And in fact, he will be presenting it, to get feedback before coming to this committee. On Thursday, we'll present, we have a meeting with the Arts Election Committee and the Public Art Committee.
Anyone have any questions?
Well, I'm just curious, is this going to be coated with something that can be cleaned? I live
Yes.
adjacent to the high school. The kids can destroy anything, and they do. And is it something that someone can come in and clean spray paint off of successfully?
Yes.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
without getting into really any detail, the artwork is applied to these aluminum panels.
Right.
And then there is a coating that goes on top of that is essentially, what do you say? There's a particular material that takes virtually everything off.
Cool. Okay.
So
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's not alcohol or something that is used specifically on that.
Alcohol's not allowed on the trails.
Right. Yeah.
The other kind.
I'm aware of that, Richard.
The other kind.
Just checking. And I think Charlie's comment about the high school students certainly does not apply to the group this evening. We're going to be
No,
hearing
not
from in a
this-
minute.
not this
Just trying to
Correct.
point that out.
Yeah.
You
Anyone
could
else have
tell
any
the
questions?
difference that they have done it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll look forward to you in
Yeah.
a month or
sounds
two.
good.
Sure, yes, in a month, I think.
Are the high school students here?
No.
You've seen them? No.
Right, so we texted Marco just a couple minutes ago because usually they powwow out in the lobby and we did not see them. So,
Yes.
We'll just push them down the
Isn't it spring
line a
break?
little bit.
Yeah. It's spring break,
Actually,
isn't it?
it is.
yes,
it is
and
cool.
actually,
Oh.
I did send a text message to Marco Rando since we didn't see him, and if I can report that he thought it was next Tuesday. So he apologizes to you all, and explaining, of course, that this is spring break. And again, he apologizes for their absence.
Okay.
Your meeting just got shorter.
Yes.
But they're the high.
Not near as much fun.
That was the one fun one, no?
Yeah. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
I guess we'll have to discuss them coming back at another time. Next week is a panel, so I'm not sure that's.
Well, that'll work.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay. All right, so we're gonna skip over the Lake Thoreau spillway.
It's kind of nice down We have the materials, we can
And
still
let's,
review it.
this Vantage Hill is next on our agenda. Whoever's here for Vantage Hill wants to come up and tell us what's going on here.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all.
You're welcome.
I'm doing it, yeah. It's an up, down button, hit the next button, and you go to the next one. Yep, great. Great, well, thank you all. I'm Rob Schuman, the treasurer of Vantage Hill Association. This is Tanya, who's our president. Brian Winterhalter, you all probably know some.
Yes, we do.
And Julie Clementi from CDC Development Group. So we are here to kind of give you some background and get some early feedback on kind of what we're contemplating doing. As you all know, Vantage Hill is up directly behind Lake Ann Elementary School, between Lake Ann Elementary School and Barron Cameron Drive. We have been, or Vantage, that wasn't the right one. Let's try that one. There we go. So Vantage Hill was one of the very early Reston developments. It was built in the late 60s and has about 152 units, I believe, split between 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We are primarily 65% or so owner-occupied still. But as you can see, we are at the lower end of the price range in Reston, in fact, all of Fairfax County, probably, more or less. I mean, we are basically workforce housing, as people like to refer to it, but market-priced workforce housing, non-subsidized. So the good news is we're great workforce housing. We have a beautiful location. We're obviously in Reston, which is great. The units themselves are large, they're spacious, they're very functional, and they're very nice. Our community is very ethnically and economically diverse. We have everybody from flight attendants to people who work at 7-Eleven to people who are professionals and starting out in their careers and things of that nature. So it's a large group. The problem is we have been in a slow and steady decline from an infrastructure perspective. So we have plenty of money to do our normal repairs. So fixing the roofs, cutting the lawns, painting, all of that is not a problem. Our issue is that we have 60-year-old electrical infrastructure. Okay, and to give you a sense of scale, our units were built as apartments. So 3 units, 3 stacked on top of each other, share a single 60-amp circuit breaker. Okay? and that infrastructure is 60 years old. Our water infrastructure is 60 years old. We deal with a pipe pinhole leak almost every week on our property, one way or another. Okay? Our gas is actually in pretty good shape, but our windows are all still single pane windows. Okay, and our huge, we have 11-foot sliding doors. They are also single pane sliding doors. We literally leak hot and cold air into the world every day. We have a failed pool. Our pool closed 7 years ago, has not been opened since. I think you all have seen it occasionally, probably. And there's no way it's ever going to reopen. And our community is slowly shifting more and more to rental units. Okay, it is essentially in a slow and steady decline. We have no funds, and our people who live in our community don't really have the money to pay to do the real infrastructure need we have. Okay, and so the board over the last 5 years that I've been on it has been grappling with how to solve this problem. Okay, and so what we have looked at is, and where we have come to, is to take our asset, unused asset, the pool area, and essentially find a development partner and develop something on it, and use the proceeds from that development in order to fund the rebuild of our infrastructure. Okay? So we looked initially, if you look up there, you can see the little red outline there. That's effectively the area we're looking to do. We initially looked at only the pool area, and that was only about an acre. And we started 2.5 years ago, I guess now. We went out, Julie helped us go out and talk to a bunch of developers. It was a very amorphous project at the time. Some of you may have heard we worked with Bozzuto. We ended up working extensively over the last 9-10 months with Bozzuto on this. And as we did that, we refined the project some. And what we ended up looking at doing was that the single acre lot is heavily sloped and has problems building on it, as well as was being very small. And so where we ended up with them was, if we took the parking area that kind of extends over by the pool there, that upper right corner there, and we'll show a better picture in a minute, and took that parking and sprinkled it into the main development areas, which quite frankly is actually much better, because right now that parking is almost useless to people who live at the other end of the community. And sprinkle some more parking into the main slot, then we could essentially make almost a 2-acre parcel size, which was a little bit more developable and easier for them to fit units onto. And so we have come to an area where we now kind of know what we're trying to achieve there, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and we kind of want to get feedback on what we're looking to put there. The other item that's critical is we have worked extensively with our members. So we've had a membership vote that had a 70% positive vote. 70% of the members voted in approval of doing this. Okay, and I think there were only 3 members who voted no, and the rest were, of course, silent. But that's critical because we have to have approval to split off the land and all that stuff. One of the other items that we want to talk about here is, as we worked with Bizzuto and company, we had 2 focuses for them. One was that we wanted to preserve as much of a large open green space area as we could, okay? Especially for the people who live in our existing buildings, the 2 buildings that are implicated. And the second one was to preserve tree cover as much as possible in the process.
Can you expand on what sort of approvals you do need from your ownership in order to do this?
Absolutely. So we need 2/3 majority approval from the ownership in order to do this per our bylaws. And so what we got was approval from our community to essentially to do the whole thing. So the board voted, gave approval for the community voted, gave approval to the board. With enough approval, the board in theory could execute the entire thing. Okay. That said, when we were exploring this with Bizzuto's the insurance, title insurance company requested that when we have a very explicit project to know exactly what units and what's going to be built, the title insurance company wanted another affirmative 2/3 vote for the specific project and the specific sale in order to be comfortable to give clean title to the units. Okay? So we may or may not have another vote depending on what developer we end up with. At this point, we do not have a developer, but we are in active discussions with 3 or 4 developers to look at the property. So with this proceeds, what we're looking to do is, first of all, replace all of our electrical infrastructure and take it to individually metered. Today, we are common metered for everything in the units. Okay, that obviously is not even allowed by code anymore for condominiums. So we will rebuild the electric infrastructure, go to individually metered electricity in the units. We will go to rebuild the water infrastructure, hopefully also individually meter that. Depends on viability. Hot water is a bit of an issue there. And then the gas will probably leave common because it's not clear it's an easy way to individually meter that. We will replace all of our windows and doors with modern high efficiency units. And then as we are moving all the parking, we'll be able to do stormwater upgrades to our entire parking lots. We'll be able to put in modern catchment systems and all the stuff we want for stormwater management in the process. And then we're looking at a couple other slightly smaller things, but more quality of life things. So we want to expand our playground. We already have a nice playground. We want to expand that and make it a nicer playground. There's a lot of kids on our property because we're right by Lake Ann, obviously. And then one of the other things that people want to explore is putting in electric charging stations so that some of our folks can start getting electric cars, which are obviously coming. And when we have an electrical infrastructure that gets ported, that will be very helpful. So it's things kind of along those lines, but the big ones are to rebuild the absolute core of our infrastructure and essentially set the buildings up for another 50 years of life. So the existing site, as you can see it, is there a laser pointer on this thing? Probably not. is kind of, that lower left corner is the area that we're going to cut out. You can see the little black line. Yeah, and that's Vantage Hill, so. Yeah, I'm going to come up here. Oh, I can take, oh, it's not where it is. Oh, sweet. Perfect. Okay, great. So as you look at the property here, this is Vantage Hill Road, runs right in here into the circle. Okay. This is an existing building right here. This is existing parking lot, and this here is the failed pool. Okay, and then we have units here, here, and kind of sprinkled throughout. So what we're looking at doing is this parking area would disappear and would be filled in. You can see the little red areas kind of, it would get essentially 50 spaces would get sprinkled out into the rest of the area. Okay. And this red line is effectively the proposed boundary line between the two developments at that point. Okay. So this is a layout that we did with Bizzuto. This is only a sample layout of what's possible. But you can see what we did here was this is the existing units, and the goal was to preserve this area down here, which is heavily treed. And these in particular in through here, these are very large old oaks that we wanted to preserve, okay? And that preservation kind of pushed this, and this is all of the open area the pool was in anyways, and this is already open parking lots. So basically, we're pushing the development of the units into what's already open area to help with the tree preservation as we look at it. As another view kind of showing and we're restriping, so that's just another overview generally of how they would lay in with the main. This was an example. This was again working with Bizzuto. They were looking at essentially back-to-back townhouse styles, development styles. That where we end up with other developers is obviously going to change. They're going to have a very particular style, but we will work with them. We want it to fit into our neighborhood, just like you want it to fit into the overall Reston look and feel. Then I don't know if we had pictures. I sent Lisa some pictures. Are those? It's a different file. I can show you some pictures of the land if you want to see it. And then our goal here is really to get feedback from you all on kind of some of the layout and what we're trying to achieve, so that when we come with the development partner, you know, we're a step ahead of the game and bringing you something that is at least in the ballpark of what you all would find interesting and applicable to the site. Absolutely. Julie, you want to grab the mic?
Again, I'm Julie Clementi with Clementi Development Company. And while I am the president of the company, and we do an awful lot of development and management of commercial and residential properties throughout the county, we are not doing that for this particular project. Rob and his group asked me to come on board basically as a consultant and as a facilitator to help them identify some of the obstacles that they might face as they attempted to go through this process, as well as some of the opportunities and how to best position this property to maximize its value to the community association, but also to create something and enter into a contract with a developer that would be viable and that would be agreeable and amenable to the Reston Association. The Reston Association's comprehensive plan, small c, small p. But goal is to do infill projects that are consistent with the contiguous properties. Vantage Hill at Wainwright is surrounded by 2/2s, low-rise condos, stick-built, and townhouses, individual townhouses. So the kinds of development, regardless of the fact that the FAR that this property could support would be something up to 168 additional units. Vantage Hill recognizes that that kind of density isn't practical and isn't consistent with the contiguous communities nor its community. So it has effectively punted on its goal or a goal of trying to achieve a maximum FAR and instead build something with a maximum reasonable density, you know, on the project that is reasonable both for the builder to be able to sell it build it and sell it out, and where Vantage Hill can participate in the proceeds from the maximum amount of density that makes sense on the site. And that's been their overriding goal, is to find that happy place in the middle that maximizes the available density, but doesn't in any way, shape, or form nearly achieve what they're entitled to by right if you were simply to look at the FAR. Just wanted to make that clear. So, and that's the message that's being conveyed to the prospective builders as well. The other thing that Vantage Hill is doing at Wainwright is has gone to the the supervisor's office. Catherine Hutchins did designate this pool area as a blighted area with a capital B, and it would require something approximately in the neighborhood of about 200 grand for the community association to repair the swimming pool, which is no longer needed, wanted, or desired by, or affordable to the community, which is why the concept of subdividing it off, carving it off, and selling it to a developer for a more, and redevelop it, and make it more logically an asset to the community made sense. But the designation of blight within the county, you guys know, needs to be remediated one way or the other, and Vantage Hill doesn't have a means to fund those kinds of repairs for a project, frankly, for a swimming pool that's not wanted within the community. What the community wants to see, as evidenced by the votes, is the redevelopment of that parcel with additional density. Thank you.
I just had a couple of questions.
Yep.
I'm sure everybody has other questions, but we'll let you finish doing your presentation. But are you guys just kind of going to be a property participation? I mean, I don't know how all this works. You basically sell the property to a developer, and then for a certain amount of money, so you know that list of things you have is covered? I mean, is that how you're approaching this?
Well, so our estimated cost of repairs is probably somewhere between $3.5 and $4.5 million of work that our community needs. We think we're going to get reasonably close to that number, probably with proceeds. Obviously, until it's all done, we won't know that for sure. But once we have a firm contract and the developers are basically have plans that have, you all have seen, you all have bought off on, the county's bought off on, and they basically are close to building permits. At that point, we would have a pretty good indication of how much we would have. And then we would start our detailed process of planning out the actual work. And once we're at that point, we would be back here anyways, because we'd need to be talking to you about what kind of windows we want to put in,
Sure.
And the changes we're going to be putting in, and we'd be talking about
Yeah.
all those stages
So
as
if you
well.
did, I'm just thinking, I mean, this is going to be a lengthy process. I'm sure you're
Absolutely.
aware of
It already has been, it will continue to
I mean,
be.
Yeah, if you do townhouses is what you suggested, that's what
That's the
plan
likely,
you showed
yes.
us is the latest version. Is that going to require like a whole new subdivision and property lines? Is it fee simple purchase kind of stuff? I mean, it's.
Yeah, that's the most likely. That's the most likely. We looked at other options, but quite frankly, the title companies really want it to be just a straight separation, fee simple, very straightforward.
Right.
Or that may be another community association. One of the questions, we went to the planning and zoning group last night, and one of the questions they had was, well, will this be another cluster within Reston?
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, well, we actually don't know the answer to that, but that's one of the things that we will have to work out as we get into that process for how would that community, because it would be a separate community, how would that tie into
Right.
the overall Reston Association?
And then just roughly how many units were in that thing you showed us?
That one was
30.
38 units,
38.
and we're estimating somewhere between 30 and 40, somewhere in that range.
Can you remind us again how many units are currently at Vantage Hill?
152.
And part of the objective or part of the explanation or development proposal that the condominium association is giving to any prospective developer is a participation in the proceeds and the density on a per unit basis, because the more density the developer is able to achieve, the more of these improvements the Vantage Hill Condominium Association can fund. So that's number one. But number two, it also has to be restrained by the fact that it needs to be consistent with the existing community and blend, and be saleable, you know, and be a viable product. So Vantage Hill has put 2.5 years behind them of experience, eliminating the things that won't work. So I think that the approach to builders is much more detailed, much more concise, much more precise, and therefore, when they come back before you, I think they'll be presenting to you for approval or asking for approval for something that's well down the road and very consistent with what you want to see there, you know, what's approvable.
And that's where my question comes in. So as the developer, you guys have a lot more contacts and ability to help them in you know, actually do these upgrades, because for a community to do that by themselves is going to be very time consuming, and the coordination that's needed with people living in their units and replacing windows and roofing and meter upgrades. I mean, people could have not power for a certain time. Dominion works at their own leisure. So, you know, what I guess I want to make sure is that if this does happen, that they're not left out. They're not just given a pile of money and then said, hey, go spend it wisely, because, you know, they're not in the business of dealing with contractors, dealing with all that. So it'd be nice if there'd be some sort of way to help them through that process and not just give them money and run.
Yeah, no, so we actually, as Vantage Hill, we've actually looked at that problem, and it's a significant problem. Okay, this will be a major imposition on the people who are living there. There'll be major upgrades to units, right? So we've actually looked at, we would probably end up hiring a full-time project manager for the duration of the upgrades, which, you know, probably be a year or year and a half or something, right? From planning through inside of the old units, right? So we would need two resources. One is a project manager who oversees and makes sure that everything's happening and scheduling and all that, right? And then they're going to need essentially administrative support almost, right? So because you got to get a hold of people, you got to make sure everybody's lined up. You know, we're going to be in this building on these 3 weeks, that everybody's ready, everybody understands. You're going to lose power for 2 days. Be aware of that. You know, move, take a vacation. You know, take a week, go somewhere, whatever it is, right? And you know, and maybe we'll end up buying. You know, we have a fair amount of sale turnover in the property. Maybe we end up buying 1 or 2 units and using those as temporary housing for people as they're moved out of their units while their units get worked on or something like that. So there's a lot of logistics. It's a very, very important point, and it's a critical issue.
Does anyone have questions up here? Ken, any questions? Or
No, I think nothing with regard to your efforts to date. I totally understand the situation. I guess a few things that I like in terms of what I've heard is the tree preservation. You're trying to put this in a footprint that's already been utilized, i.e. concrete, asphalt's already there, so let's just change it. There's also a cluster of townhomes, I believe, that is adjacent to you, Colson cluster, I believe.
That's correct.
The famous architect, Smith, who designed, or was the architect for my townhomes, our townhomes over in Waterview. So one of the things I would suggest, since this will get into design, the question is, have they been notified? Are they, i.e. an affected party for this, in terms of, would you get their input? Because one of the things I would say and comment would be, whatever design eventually is put to paper and eventually put to concrete, etc., would respect and be harmonious, as we would suggest, to the surrounding environs as well as surrounding communities. And I would take that community into consideration as you do this. If you're building townhomes, I would take a lot of cues from that architect, would be my suggestion.
Well noted.
Yeah. And one of the things, and I believe that's them right behind
Yes.
there, actually. You can see them back behind there, right? So one of the items is, if you looked at that layout that we did with Pizzuto,
yeah,
there's actually very little footprint that faces them. It was really just the ends of 2 rows that were even and got close. And so that's exactly part of what we're trying to do, is minimize that. Also, there's a stream that runs through back part of that, that you need to keep a little back off as well. So we were basically trying to pull it away from them a little bit, give more green space that way.
I respect the pulling away and protecting the space, but I'm looking at purely as a design as well. I'd hate to see two dramatically different architectures when you might be able to take some of the cues and do what is correct for today's day and age. I get that.
Right.
I think
But-
one of the major emphases of the project that we're bringing to and the prospective developers is the harmonious nature. It's got to be harmonious or it won't get past this board, you know, and making that very clear. Don't waste Vantage Hill's time. With every day that passes, Vantage Hill's infrastructure, you know, is costing the condominium association money, you know, out of pocket. I mean, it's overhead costs for repairs and maintenance is just astronomical relative to what it will be when it gets through this process. So it has a vested interest in bringing before this board a project, a developer, and a layout and an environment and a look that this board is going to say that works, and you know, and it can march forward as quickly as possible. That's why they're here. That's why we're here tonight. So we thank you for your feedback, your comments. Please, if you have any other comments, you can shoot them to me or shoot them to Brian
We're still
Windler.
asking
I don't think we're done.
Okay, great. No, that's great.
No.
When-
What I'm saying after.
When we're done, after.
No, but after tonight, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, if things occur to you, the goal is to maintain a conversation, you know, so that we keep it going.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's why we're here today. That's why we wanted to come and do this informational session so we can start the dialogue.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Yep, great.
You mentioned you met with the supervisor. Have you filed an application with the county yet, or is it still just?
No, we have not.
No pre-application meeting with county staff yet either? Okay.
Well, so no applications have been filed with the county. We have met with the county.
Okay. Gotcha. Just trying to understand where the process is at.
Yeah, very early.
Gotcha.
Neil?
Definitely a process, and I think the end result is probably something that everybody appreciates, this board included, if it's done right. And we can all look at parts of it that maybe we're wondering about. The parking being absorbed into the neighborhood, and what that does to your existing neighborhood in terms of site disturbance and a site plan and stormwater management to current standards and all of that. I mean, there are a lot of parties that have to get satisfied in this thing for it to all work. And so, you know, I think you've got a good team assembled. It seems awfully challenging to get everybody satisfied at the level they're going to need to be satisfied at and have enough money to go around, as it were.
Correct.
38 units sounds, I mean, you know, before you said how many units, and I'm looking at the pool up there and I'm thinking, I was thinking, you know, it wasn't a big enough parcel to handle 38 units. I was thinking it was going to be maybe half that. So, you know, it looked like it fit pretty well when you put the graphic up. But I'm still wondering if that's the case. I'm sure they've got to get a decent, I mean, obviously the numbers have to work. You have to get, you know, just processing out loud, it still seems to me like getting your parking requirements satisfied. You know, that's not fixing windows and stuff that you have election over. This is stuff that has to work immediately
Correct.
to meet the county's requirements. And, you know, not letting that start getting out of control and wondering, I guess, you know, long strips of parking in front of the current buildings is a little disappointing. But I get that's kind of the only answer really that I'm seeing either. But always paying attention, as we do on all these types of projects, to landscaping in the parking areas and trying to do as much as you can. So challenging. Good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, and your points are very apropos. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time actually when we're doing this with Bizzuto in terms of looking at where we could put the parking spots, and we worked with their land designer, their land architects, and that included Bizzuto did a full tree survey of the entire 15-acre property in preparation for this. And we were looking, even as we put in those parking areas, to do tree preservation for what's there, try to keep some islands of green, again, to break up, you know, a huge, long expanse of parking spaces where possible. And so But our requirement on the developer is that we have a one-for-one parking replacement. So if they want to take one of the parking spots that we have, we have to put in a replacement parking spot. Okay, and we were able to achieve that with that layout.
Just continue to have questions about the timing of all that. That's really up to you. It's not a DRB issue, but.
Yeah,
seems-
so
seems like
it's got to
that's really-
happen. It's those new parking spaces have to be in place before the old
exactly.
ones get destroyed.
Exactly.
Exactly, so there's a significant flow problem, correct. And the whole thing has to go in as one application of the county, right, because it's all
Even though
tied
you're
together.
separate ownership, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the nice things, Clementi Development Companies, I've got 30 years worth of experience at doing it wrong, and making mistakes that I've brought to the table. And so Vantage Hill Condominium Association's board, the people sitting to my left, as well as its legal counsel, is really now well-versed in what's going to fly and what's going to work and what won't, and what obstacles and what hurdles they have to jump through. The first being getting the appropriate developer with the appropriate development on site and approved, and then they'll have the hurdle of negotiating within their condominium association the use of the proceeds. That's the next conversation. But the folks to my left are very competent and now very well versed in the process and understand what they're taking on and how to make it work.
I've always found Baldwin Grove, where I used to have a condo before I moved a few years ago, to be interesting in that they're townhouses and condos that share a cluster identity, but they're separate entities. They're different
There you go.
associations, and that would seem to, the townhouses at Vantage Hill or whatever it ends up being, share, and it seems awfully small to be a self-identified cluster. And it might behoove Vantage Hill to have this front door set of townhouses as its cluster identity, sort of helping you update your own identity, even
Right.
if that's not happening.
So, yeah, no, exactly, and that's part of what we need to figure out in the final details of the process. But that's clearly one of the issues. And we thought for a while of whether it might be a part of our condominium association, but in the end, that doesn't make any real sense. And it really needs to be built out as a separate land parcel effectively. But that still leaves a question of what it was and what it should be named and how it ties into the cluster system. Absolutely.
Charlie?
No, I think it's a great project. I just hope that the upgrades aren't so upgraded that the price of the units go up where the working people can't afford to live in them anymore. I mean, they're nice apartments and in a nice neighborhood. And, I hate to see them get so nice that people can't afford to live in them.
Yeah, so.
I mean, that money isn't going to go that far, I realize.
No, exactly. Unfortunately, almost all the upgrades are going to
You
be
got a
hidden
big
behind
list.
walls.
You have a big list.
Other than having nice windows and doors again,
Yeah.
everything else will basically be hidden. And
People don't know.
might not huge experience, but that doesn't tend to bring a lot more money in at sale.
Right.
Whether or not you have good plumbing behind the walls, nobody really notices or pays much attention.
But if
They
there's
should, but they
ice
don't.
not on the inside of the glass, they do notice
That's a
that.
big plus, absolutely.
Mike, anything?
Yeah, I guess I worry about, the big thing is the density. I know the FAR is much bigger. The problem is that this, if you look at all the houses in that area, Vantage Hill, even though some of those buildings are 4 stories, when you look at them from the front, it's a 2-story building. It's because they have a dramatic drop off on the back. You only see 4 stories from the path or whatever. I walk by here all the time. So I worry about the 4 stories right along Wainwright Drive there. It's going to be 40 feet, 45 feet once you get the thing right up on that road. I mean, I know there's another community, not just Colson Cluster, but there's Wainwright Cluster right across Wainwright Road right there. That those houses there are on there. There's a couple houses that are 3-story in the back of the basement, but then the other 2 are 2-story, and they're up a hill. So I just worry about the density that is being proposed, and I'm sure it's because it needs to work financially. I don't know. I've never been a fan of the 2/2s, so I know that's what's coming, our way, and it's what's in all the TSA right now and everything. But personally, I don't think Reston, the inner part of Reston, can support the design. But that's just kind of my opinion.
Yeah.
It works well, I think, where you could do, 2 stories with a basement on the bottom side and easily kind of, sell maybe a more, I don't know what your end goal of kind of a price range, but these, You know, I know they're selling, you know, around whatever, 500,000-600,000, and maybe you do more high-level product or something in the area, because in that area, you know, you have Waterview Cluster, which is a high-demanding product, there's lower Wainwright Cluster is a more affordable product, Polson Cluster is kind of in between, so you know, there's kind of a ton of price ranges all in that area that maybe, I just don't know if the 2/2, that's just my biggest kind of hesitation. with the 2/2.
Yeah,
Because inherently, the design always shifts to one thing, that you go to Herndon, you see the same thing. You go to Ashburn, you see the same thing. You
Right.
go to, you know, so it just, they always look the same. So that's the only thing I hesitate that.
Yeah, part of the design that's looked at there, it's a little bit harder to see in that picture, but there's actually, that 4-story is actually back set, and there's a balcony in front. Right, to try to break that up a little bit, if you can zoom in. Those are actually kind of the 3 up, and then there's a balcony at the top, so that the individual units have balconies up front to try to break that height up a little bit.
No, I know. I guess what I'm saying is I could go down the street about a mile from here and see the exact same building.
Oh, absolutely.
And that to me is just not what should fit in that neighborhood. There's very unique original architecture to Reston in that area,
Right.
and that doesn't fit in. That's just my opinion.
I don't think you've been talking townhouses anyway, not 2/2s, right?
No, that's what's being proposed. That's
No,
what,
he
Well,
said townhouses earlier.
well, they're townhouse condominiums, which is 2/2.
Oh, so these are 2/2s.
Well,
I misunderstood.
Pizzuto was looking at doing what they call back-to-backs, which aren't full 2/2s. They're a little bit different. There's some of the developers may be looking at 2/2s. We don't know yet until we have a full design, but that's part of the feedback why we're here, right?
Yeah.
Is to get some early feedback from you all
Yeah,
that we
I
can
think-
also take back to the developers.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of words that we always run into here, and please keep all this in mind. One is context.
Yep.
I think you've kind of heard that from Ken and Mike and Neil as well, that look around, make sure what you're doing fits in. And I think the massing is another thing we always look at. And if it looks too massive for the site or over, as I guess you pointed out, the street front, if it looks too massive on the street as you come in. I mean, these are all kind of, we're a design review board. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for. And I think, I mean, the numbers, I hope you guys can make it work. I mean, to get up to your 4 million, whoever does this is gonna have to come up with about $100,000 a unit to cover your not just to do your $4 million worth of
Correct.
renovations.
Correct. And
And
the
that
challenge.
starts off your numbers climbing. So,
Exactly.
you know,
And
that's,
the challenge for the site is heavily sloped out into the
Right.
pool.
Right.
So they're gonna have major site work costs.
Yeah.
And that site work cost is almost identical whether it's 10 units
Sure.
or 30
Sure.
units, right?
Yeah.
And so the challenge is finding that density point that works.
Yeah.
Because if there's not enough density, it doesn't become viable for the developer or viable for us.
Sure.
And so that's the challenge, but we'll do the best we can. We absolutely will be looking to take cues from the neighborhood.
I think it's incredibly creative proposal you guys are working with here. I hope it works. I mean, it's,
We do too.
you know, this way we get to keep Vantage Hill the way it is,
You'll be
fixed
the-
up, of course.
You'll be the first to know.
Yeah. Really. No, that's it. Anyone have any other questions or thoughts? No. Okay. Thank you all very much for
Thank you,
coming.
folks.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you all.
Appreciate it.
Great, thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Big challenge.
Hidden.
Kind of know what it's all
Okay, we got
already.
Wendy's. Did you bring the bag of burgers with you? We asked you.
Oh, there you go. I'll take that.
We can wait while you go get them.
You guys deliver right with Grubhub now.
So tonight, we're looking at signs and catching up with the renovation, right?
Yes. So the last time that I was before you all, I'm Tracy Deal, I'm the applicant for Wendy's. Last time that I was before you all, it was for the signs, and at that time it was indicated that we couldn't come before you for the signs until the facade renovations had been brought before you. So I have with me tonight Wendy's and the company that did the renovation to the facade. And their explanation before you, first of all, is that Fairfax County issued building permits and never bothered to tell them to come here. Apparently building permits don't go through the same process that sign permits do. And so we're two separate people handling the permitting process. They were handling the building renovation process, and I was handling the sign renovation process. And in the cross of things, project management didn't share information to explain to somebody that they needed to come before you. So I come with an apology, first of all, that was not shared between anybody. So I think we should probably talk about the facade renovations first.
Sure.
And then we can talk about the signs. And we have taken input that came from the board last time regarding the signs. So the signs have changed. So the facade renovations are overall, it's a national renovation project that Wendy's is doing. They're taking all of their older stores and eventually all of their new stores as well will have this appearance. And they're updating the facade. So it's nothing structural. It's all superficial to the facade. And then they're putting in materials that give you an updated look, a cleaner look. And so I don't know who has visited or if anybody has visited the site to see what has taken place, but the facade renovations obviously are complete. So this is what you have before you. And there are daytime and nighttime photos. And you can see it's a metal type structure that adheres to the front of the building through appropriate structural methods, attachment methods, so that it can give it an updated look from what it looked like previously. And overall, it's a cleaner look. It's consistent with the color-scapes in that area, consistent with the overall aesthetics of the area. The only piece, because previously the facade had brown on it, it's still the same brown or bronze. The only thing that is unique is the red wall feature, and that is unique to the Wendy's brand. That is part of what their stores all look like, one of their store models now. So we're here to answer any questions that you may have about those facade renovations at a technical level. There were also some lighting features that were installed around the rim of the building. There is a lighting that allows for safety lighting on the building. It's predominantly not to draw attention to the building, but more so to provide downcast lighting onto the property for patrons that are there at night that visit the property so that they can navigate their way through the property safely. And that is an LED light strip that goes around the edge of the building, and then the light canisters that shine down on the walkways to offer ambient lighting for the people that are walking around the building, depending on what their point of entry is, and the drive-through elevation as well. There was no changes to the menu boards that took place. The menu boards are still the same as what they were previously. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, I guess we're just starting with the renovation. We'll get to the signs next. So let's start. Mike, do you have any questions, thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess the one thing that jumped out to me, my brother-in-law lives literally right on the other side of the trees in those townhouses, is all the lighting that's been put underneath the van. I don't know if, I know there's some, that's considered lighting, or is it considered part of signage?
No, it's actually
It's not
lighting.
a band, like it's lighting.
Yeah.
So I guess the old building, you know, those pictures, you can see there was no lighting kind of on the top of the mansard. It was just all lower level, which is, you know, the recess lights is, you know, where all those old globes were. You guys have basically turned those to recess lights, which, you know, I have no problem with. I guess it's more of just the additional light up top. It just, you know, it's great for Wendy's because you turn the corner and you see, bam, Wendy's. But it's just, it goes all the way around the building. It faces that residential property. It's, you know, it just is very bright. So that's just my kind of hesitation. Is the rest of the design I appreciate it.
One of the big things is, and I don't know, we were looking at a really nice picture of that side earlier.
There's they have the nighttime photo. There's actually a nighttime
Oh,
photo if you keep going. No.
But one of
There
the
were
big
nighttime
things
photos.
is there's not any parking lot lights on
You can show
our
them.
side.
I'll stand here.
Sure.
The drive-through side here is where Brian's talking about, and I believe where you're talking about the condos that go straight through the trees.
Yeah.
And maybe, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, is it's Stevenage Road?
It's one of those, yeah, it's, they're the, they all look like little gingerbread houses. Out there.
So directly through there, down this hill, I'd say it drops a good 20, 25 feet in elevation. But down this whole corridor here to the drive-through, there's no actual parking lot lights to illuminate anything on this side of the building. So obviously the egress points from the building coming through here are down these stairs, not only provides a little bit of adequate lighting for people to see those stairs and get down them safely, but also a little bit of security for people coming up this hill maybe with some sort of nefarious activity going on down there. So it provides a little bit of extra added security for those folks parking on that end of the parking lot and walking up to that side of the building.
This is the, what it looks like at night, so everybody can see it.
I think just to chime in, it really gets to how bright it is. So we need to have some way of quantifying that.
I'm sorry?
The lighting by itself probably isn't an issue. It's whether or not the lights are too bright.
Oh, okay, okay.
And
Yeah,
a
and this
photograph's
is-
not going
so
to tell
this-
us that.
Right, that's true. I do know that the gas station is substantially brighter when you compare
I'm
the
sure it
two.
And it's probably not in compliance at this point because everybody's
Yeah.
relamping these days.
Yeah. It's,
They're not under our purview though.
The gas station.
The Exxon.
Is the Reston open 24/7?
No, it's open until, the drive-through's open until 2 a.m.
Okay, well, it's almost.
It opens again at 5.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Has your brother complained?
No, it's just, I've noticed because when I drive into that road, but because the elevation change, you're looking up almost at the Wendy's. And it's only a problem during, 5, 6 months out of the year, basically, when there's no leaves. But it was brilliant. Obviously it's been winter time, but now it's all green. But I mean, that's all you see is Wendy's. Which I think it could just be changed, just that one back band of lights. I mean, I get that Stevenage is the road that kind of backs up into Home Depot. Sometimes there are
and there's
characters wandering around, but
there's no parking lot lights on that elevation either. On that Stevenage side, there are no light poles on the parking lot or anything.
yeah.
There's nothing lighting the
Yeah,
parking
there's
lot at all.
not a single light in Home Depot parking lot. And that's because it's
Wow.
Reston.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's the unfortunate thing here. I think you were at our panel for the signage when you came through initially,
Yeah.
and my first reaction was the lighting on the facade was inappropriate, and I don't think this board would have approved that because the residential across the gas station is different because it's only within the context of the commercial center. You don't have residential that abuts it, so
Okay.
this is gonna be the one-off problem here. I understand that there's no parking lot lighting. I think that can be resolved through lower scale parking lot lights that are shielded properly that direct the light into the parking lot, and that would be the solution, but it's not gonna be a light that's casting outward towards the residential. It's gotta be inward towards
And
the
it's
site.
actually just, it's not shooting out those LED lights, shooting straight down.
I know, but I've driven through there and I live right over there, and it's bright, and I do feel for the residents across there, because it's something that they bought into for years before this came in, and now they've got this bright light band that, you mentioned 5 months of the year, it's gonna be problematic and kind of intrusive to their backyard, so I think that's the issue. For three facades with it, I don't think there's an issue, but it's just this one side facade here that's.
Well, let's keep going.
Yeah, sorry.
Where we are now, is Charlie.
No, that would be my only concern if those could be shielded. I think the aesthetics, it's a great improvement in place. It was getting kind of flawed and just.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So
What?
is the board saying that they don't want any lighting on that elevation, or would you be happy with a lower lumen
just-
output, or?
Let's go around the table and get all the comments, and we'll decide what we
Okay.
all think as a group per se.
Okay,
Because they're gonna have some different opinions here, I think.
okay.
Neil?
I think the architecture looks great. It's a model for what the rest of the center might do. Not talking about the signage yet. In terms of the lighting, I'll have to defer to the people who've been out there at night and driven up Stevenage Road. I haven't done that because it sits up way high, because even if it shines straight down with that kind of elevation, it could still be an issue. And I don't doubt it. If Nick's been out there and seen it, and Mike, and they see it, they say it's disruptive, then it's disruptive, and that's why we have a design review board.
Nick, you already said your piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, in general, we'll come to signage next, but in general, I have no issues with it. It does look very good. I think I have driven over there, been over there many times. I've actually gotten a few things there to get my frosty. And so I'm used to going there the old way and the new way. I was very comfortable driving through there in the old way. So if there is a way, for the sake of the neighbors, of somehow either changing the color tone or whatever by adjusting it, or even just the brightness, possibly even eliminating, and perhaps if you really are serious about security back there, perhaps installation of some actual parking lamps somewhere that's here to there. That's the only question I have. Otherwise, I'm fine with it.
I have a couple of comments. I agree with everyone. I think the architecture looks great. I think Hill did a good job with that. It's water, at least up into the 2000s, which is always good for Reston to get out of the 60s and 70s. The lighting, somewhere in here, I think we have to find a compromise. I'm not sure what it is. I would rather have this little bit of strip lighting up there. I mean, you get into this thing of if you have a house that backs up to a commercial site, there are going to be issues no matter what. It's like, don't build a house at the end of Dulles' runway and then complain about airplane noise, you know, so there's this kind of thing that's going on there. The little strip of light doesn't bother me as much if there's a way that we can somehow put a shield in front of it so it comes down the face of the building. There might be things you could do. I would much rather see it just the way it is instead of a row of parking lot lights. That's just me. I think a bunch of 12-foot poles, box fixtures or not, to me would be a lot worse than this one simple little light that runs across the top of the building. So, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about this. It's, yep.
Just to add to that, the closer you get the parking lot lights to the edge of the property, I would agree that could be a worse solution in the end.
That's kind of what I was going to say,
Yeah.
is the only place that we can put, if we were to put parking lot lights down that side, we'd have to put them right at the edge of the parking lot, because the property actually starts sloping.
Right.
About, if you see where that tall tree is at right there, that's,
Right. But that's my
we had to
concern.
put them up, you know, right down through there.
You know,
could do little
people
bollards.
driving through there.
With modern LEDs that are directed properly and shielded properly, though, you're not gonna get that light trespass behind it like you do with an old
But I think
shoebox.
what the issue's gonna be is when you're still down low like that, you're gonna see that row of lights shining down onto the parking lot, you're still gonna see that.
Townhomes at the same elevation, it goes back up, so they're not gonna be looking at that. So, of course, people driving are gonna see it, but the people that live across it permanently might not be.
Yeah, but I think the people across the road, that elevation down there is still 30 or 40 feet below us. I don't think that slopes up very quickly at all.
Yeah, to Brian's point with that one, I did actually take some of the nighttime photos here, and when I walked down that embankment there and onto Stevenage, and I actually walked across towards the tree line before you do get those condos there, looking up, obviously, and this is just purely opinionated, it's not that big of, there's not this bright, light coming at you, but the elevation does stay right there around Stevenage. It does not hop back up. So to his point, if we end up putting a light, if you could for a second, that sat like this right here, from down here, they're still gonna see the same amount of light no matter how much direction. And then the ambience of that light is still gonna be true.
Yeah, I think that there's a need for some kind of lighting back there, and I think the subtlety of this light on the building is something I personally would much rather see than row parking lot lights. I mean, and you can't put them, it just, I'm not that bothered by it.
Do you guys know, I mean, I'm looking at the tech specs that you guys provided. Do you guys know if you installed the ones with 7100 Kelvin, or did you install the 3200 Kelvin? Because there is a 3200
This
Kelvin.
was GE 7100Ks.
Right. So if we just scale it back to 3200, then we get to that softer light. I mean, I think I guess that's kind of where I'm going with it, is that it's the super bright blue light that we don't improve anywhere really. So it's just tough that's what I'm getting at. So.
And to speak with that, we thought about using a softer light on that. What it actually does is it creates almost a halo effect around most of the building. We have to use it a lot in New Mexico, and we get out in the Midwest and Southwestern regions. And they have a lot of dark skies ordinance. So what that lower light does is actually, since it's like lower light, it goes and pollutes the air a little bit, what we call light pollution. What it does is creates an effect of almost standing smoke, or if you've ever seen a light sitting in a dense fog, that's what you see more of. I do have a proposal, if everyone would like to kind of hear it, I think it would go with the building. It would soften that light up just a little bit more and keep everything on the same color, at least with the, as long as, the lighting. But wouldn't change the color of the lighting, so you'd still have 4 elevations of the buildings that look the same, and that's proposing a light diffuser to go up in the area as you see that track lighting. It would basically be polycarbonate white. It would be diffused on the second surface, so basically the weather couldn't hurt it. No birds or animals or critters could get up there and scratch it, because it would be on the inside of it. But it fixed that up there on that one elevation, where what it would do is actually dim that lighting from the north elevation there. I think it would be a simple fix. It's something we can definitely do. I don't think that it's going to change anything but decrease the amount of light coming off that elevation of the building.
That makes sense.
I also want to point out that we were asked to notify Whispering Hill, which I believe is a
That is the name, yeah.
residential area, and we notified them twice by certified letter and had signed cards from them receiving our notification that this was taking place with photographs and everything, and no responses from them. And I don't know if anybody's here from Whispering Hill tonight, but we've had no feedback at all.
Yeah, but there are no affected parties listed, so.
No,
The
and
answer is
we were asked to notify them specifically because of the lighting, because of other properties that they had issues with. So we made sure that they were notified, and I personally made sure that they were sent images of what was going on.
Okay, well, let's, moving right along here, I think what we're getting is if you reduce the light, what was it, from 7,100 to 3,200 or whatever we're talking about, and add your little filter piece on there, I think we're getting to the point where that may be acceptable to the board.
I think what the gentleman said is perhaps not using the lower bulb, but using the diffuser
So use the
instead.
Correct. Keeping the same lights that are on there.
Using
and
the
that
same
would-
light brightness now, but using the diffuser, which he claims would actually dim it, which I'm open to.
Okay.
I'm fine. I appreciate the efforts. I would say, my opinion, that sounds like a good solution.
And what I would, to that point, I wouldn't want to dim the lights, because basically you would have 3 elevations with one color light, and then you would see a noticeable difference. And I think that would take away the aesthetics of what we've done with the building and obviously leading into that parking lot. So a diffuser would be my recommendation if we could do anything.
Okay. Ken, you want to turn what you just said into a motion?
I move that we accept the application as submitted with the following stipulation, that the proposed lighting diffuser be installed. Do we want a final look at it?
I think we'd want to review after it's done.
I personally
I
would want to review it and still hold out the color temperature may be also required.
I think you need to specify it's on the rear only that we're talking about,
No, it's actually on the north side.
whatever that side is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
North side of the driveway
You're
side.
only talking the north side.
Yeah, it's installing a light diffuser on the affected north side, with one added stipulation that we do review it with the possibility of looking at the color impact. But if anybody wants to change the wording of that last portion, let me know.
Would it please the board if, since we do have a massive production facility in North Carolina, would it please everyone if we were to actually put up just about the exact same facade, test this in our shop, and actually put this up with the corrugation, with the parapet you see, the light box, everything, put the 7100Ks up and the 3200Ks up, and then maybe do a comparison that we can send to you where we actually show a light diffuser on there as opposed to trying to put it onto the building during operational hours, go through those man hours and see what you may think about that.
I don't have a problem with that.
I'm fine with that.
Let us finish our process. We need a second for the motion. I'll second that motion. Thank you, sir. Discussion, we want to include what he just said and allow for the testing that we can see. I think that makes sense.
I can understand the difficulty of trying to put something up and then.
Yeah, I just want
It's not
to, I
necessary.
just want to do it one time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
So what's involved in going to 3,200 on the building in general for this, for all 4 sides?
For all 4 sides?
Can you do that with the fixture that's there?
It is possible. It's going to be more expensive. What we would have to do is basically all the termination points go into the building to a power supply that obviously feeds to the circuit breaker from the electrician. What we'd have to do is get the electrician back involved to disconnect that power.
So just to say, if this had come to us, we would have specified 3,200, because that's at least one of my things. I wouldn't have voted for 7,400.
The 3,000 K.
I know it's not the sort of halo effect that you're talking about, probably dissipates some, but, I don't know, I hate this, I hate the way I feel inside trying to feel like we need to approve something that we wouldn't have approved. And I think it should be 3,200, especially because it adjoins a residential area.
Yeah, I mean, my other discussion is, do you know what the bulbs are you put in the recess lights? Are those also in that 3,000 Kelvin?
That was the general contractor.
Yeah, that would have been in the 3,000 range. Of what the actual number is, no, I don't.
Because I know you can
remember.
put anything in there, so I mean, I side with kind of Neil on it, with,
Yeah, we wouldn't have approved 7,000.
but
Motion and second on the table.
I'm doing just discussion right now.
Yeah, this is discussion.
But I think we ought to ask them to do 3,200 and just be consistent with what we're trying to do in Reston generally. Why should we be bending backwards to do 7,400?
I think we get into this thing where, as Neil says, after the fact makes it more difficult for us. And we'll do what we can to work with you, but if you came in and said, we're gonna do 7,100s, what Neil said is absolutely right. We said, no, you gotta do 3,200 or 3,100, whatever it is. And I think that's the issue we're running into. I think everything else looks fine, but I think, but we have a motion in a second. And the motion included the 7,100s with a filter. So I think let's take a
Vote on it, see what happens.
Let's take a vote on that. All those in favor of the motion that was made and seconded, raise your hand. Okay, the motion dies. Okay,
I propose to amend the motion to go to 3,200 max color temperature.
and no filter.
Don't
that was part of
know
the-
about the filter. The filter on the north side may still be necessary. Just same motion, but 3,200.
And I second the motion, but add that the bulbs, the recessed bulbs to match the 3,200 Kelvin, just to verify, because you don't want two different colored lights. They're very similar now, so I had a high feeling that they're the same kind of 6,000, 7,000 range. So that's the only thing I would say add to the motion.
Motion maker, you agree with that?
I was trying to amend his motion. Is that
No.
not proper?
I'm making a whole
That
new
motion
motion.
died.
Okay,
That motion-
so that's my new motion. The same motion, just for 3,200. I'm not going to try to repeat it because I'll miss something.
With what Mike just
You
added.
seconded?
Plus,
Yeah, I second it with
plus
the.
Mike, so
Plus matching
it's
them.
fine with that.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
One opposed, abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Okay, signage.
Question on the lights. So we will go ahead and change it now to the 30, go ahead and change it now to
Whatever they are.
the 3,000 across.
End up under the soffit if they're not, whatever they might do.
I'm interested in what council had to say. What were you gonna say? You were trying to get everybody's attention?
Council was simply trying to find out what the exact nature was of the motion, because Ken's original motion had a diffuser involved. The
Diffuser's still there.
diffuser still. That's all council.
Thank you.
As Neil said, it's the same
I
motion.
just wanna make
you
sure
just
before I walk out that it's.
dropped it to the 3,200. Yeah, okay.
And are we moving on to the signs, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay. So the sign proposal is, we removed the signs that you asked us to remove last time. And took all of that information and took it down to 2 signs. A sign on the west and the south elevation. And we took the, at that time, we had the Wendy's medallion logo spaced from the letter set. So we, on the south elevation, we condensed the Wendy's medallion. See, those
Can we
are
put up
the
south
old.
elevation,
the old-
please?
Yeah, that'll be the north.
This
Those
is the
are the
north
old
elevation.
drawings.
Can we get the south elevation?
The is the south elevation.
That is, that's the
No,
one.
that's the
That's the
drive-through,
north.
isn't it?
No,
Drive-through
no,
faces north.
no, drive-through's north.
I see a drive-through window.
No.
Yeah.
That's the west elevation.
Right.
I don't understand what happened
So,
to all
right
of the
there.
dots.
Right there, yeah.
That's the side we come in, that's facing the gas.
That, yeah, that side, that bottom picture there is facing the gas station.
Yeah, the screen really changes the color, so the color doesn't, on the screen, it looks very red. It's
Yeah.
definitely not red.
Right.
It's
The
bronze.
dark browns, yeah.
So this
Okay.
is what it looks like. And then on the west elevation, it's the repeat of the same, on the west wall.
On the red,
Now that is red, yeah.
The red wall.
Yeah, that is the red wall.
the red corner.
And it's facing the,
And that faces Bracknell Drive. So these are really the only sign changes. There's only one other sign, which is like a little thank you sign that's geared towards the drive-through car. It's just a tiny little sign. It's not visible from anywhere but the drive-through car.
And it's not illuminated.
Yeah, it's not illuminated, but these two are internally illuminated signs. And the building, I'd like to point out to you that the building's been without branding for a considerable amount of time, which is really hurting the business there. So we really want to do what we can to get your approval for these signs so we can get these signs up. So if when you make your motion, if you could motion for the approval of the signs separately from the lighting, so that we can at least get the signs up and then continue to resolve any issues that the board may
It'll be a
have with the
separate
lighting.
motion. You still have to wait a week until you get the letter from.
Well, we still have to go get permitting and everything
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
That's fine, that's fine. Okay, questions on the signage, the two signs? I mean, this is quite a change from when they were in here before. I think they had 4 or 5 different signs last time. And on all sides of the building, so they've muted that quite a bit and gone back to just the 2 signs that they're showing. Anybody have any questions or thoughts about that?
I'm always looking for consistency with what we do on the other fast food restaurants. I know the Chick-fil-A at North Point's recent. Did they have 36-inch or taller?
I do not remember.
So it's always a little hard on our side of the table to say, is that a big sign or is it not a big sign? The front one on the red, to me, looks tight, a little tight. The one on the side I'm fine with. And so I'm just subjectively sitting here trying to decide if it's just a little big. That's my only comment.
It's your lucky
The one
day
on the
because
red
I
is
happen to
the
do
front.
Chick-fil-A nationally. Sorry, Wendy's.
Yeah, but we made them downsize. I know we made them
I
downsize.
actually do new construction Chick-fil-A nationally. I do all of their permits nationally, especially in Virginia. So I can tell you what their national standard
Look at the big
is.
C.
And this is cohesive with what their national standard is as well. Their national standard is actually a 5-foot letter set that they shrink down when it needs to be shrunk down. So for Reston, it would have been a 36-inch letter set.
Just for the sake of the board too, we, originally the sign guidelines say, and you probably talked about this on the panel, no 2 adjacent sides of the building have signage. But I'm okay with this because I think the way that lays out up there, you gotta have it where you put it. But I just want to say that this isn't what we typically do.
Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts on the signs?
So thank you for responding positively to our feedback at the last panel meeting. I think.
You're welcome.
I motion to approve the signs as submitted.
Second.
Go, there's motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion
Thank you.
carries.
Thank you. So we wait a week, we get a letter, then we go for our permits, then you approve, then you review the lights after, and then we'll get something done administratively for that? Is the light something that we have to come back to the board for?
I'm not sure the motion that we made didn't include a
Because you want it
further
brought down to
inspection.
3,200 and he was gonna show it to you, or are you not gonna need that anymore?
I think that was an interim thing that was
Okay.
being discussed.
Okay, I
The
just wanna make
motion-
sure that I'm
The
clear.
motion clearly only said, change them all to 3,200 and we're done.
Our standard language though says that if it's too bright, once it's put in, we still have an opportunity
Okay.
to say something.
That's what I
Hardly
wanted
ever,
to
ever,
clarify.
ever happens.
And for clarification, you do want that at 3,200K?
Correct.
And no brighter, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you all
Okay.
very much.
thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Good luck. Tall Oaks still here?
Bless you.
Is it a bunch of hamburgers? Yes. Burgers in there?
Bunch of Frosties, that's what we're looking for.
Anything on the floor?
Just to let everybody know, the speakers are picking up sound, by the way. Everybody.
You're not hearing anything back there?
Well, I hear your voice as you ordinarily are now, but not through the speakers.
Just so you know, in the back room, they're not picking up sound.
Well,
Hello?
Sounds like they are now.
sounds good now.
I think we may have to move the mics closer.
There we go.
Okay.
But
Carry
good
on.
evening. Thank you for your time. I guess we're waiting for it to load. We're before you today to get final approval on the rest of the architectural buildings at the Tall Oaks community. You've been presented and approved before for those building types, front loads, towns, the rear load towns, the 2/2s and the condominium flats, the multifamily buildings in the back. Our presentation is to continue with what was approved with the color scheme that you have, with some additional changes. There weren't any brick selections approved before with the materials. We're going to add those in today. We have some small changes to lighting, small changes to retaining walls and their designs, and we have the mechanical approvals as well, which should be the final approvals for the site. I'll preface all this with, as we continue to go through this, as you all know, we've inherited this project from before. We are now currently the owners. We have started development, and as we go through small aspects of the engineering, there are things that we are finding that need to be fixed. For example, for the amenities for the site, the developer who was before us cut and pasted from product books. Just to give you an example, there was a situation where there's like a slide with no base to it. So as you can imagine, the slide won't stand up. So there are several things of that nature that we need to tweak. So to get the base in place, to have the slide there, be expecting those kind of small changes to come in the future.
Okay.
So I do apologize for that, but we are rectifying them as we see. So, does this control the? Yes. Okay. There we go. So the first thing that we'll speak to today is the multifamily buildings, A and B, located in the back rear of the site. As you can see, the previous approvals that you had on the site have addressed the colors. Again, there weren't any brick selections. It was just brick 1, brick 2, brick 3. We're going to rectify that with our architecture. Again, with the rear elevations, you requested the full elevation view of the site as it reflects the grading of the community. We're going to reiterate that on all of our drawings as well. Again, the sides. I separated the presentation so that you can see the existing versus the proposed, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Can I ask just a quick question? What was printed, is this accurate to what you guys expected it to print as? Because I know when I look at it here, it's much different than what I have in front of me. So I just wonder, what I'm looking at there is better representation?
Yeah, as always, my printer prints differently than your printer, which prints differently than his printer.
Which projects differently.
Right, so I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right colors, as
Yes,
we get to this.
so the previous approvals are literally just me taking copies of the presentation that was brought to you before. So again, the quality of those, again, those aren't our products. Those were presented to you before from a previous contractor. I did my best to make them as clear as possible, but as you can see, when the areas of shade get copied 2 or 3 times, they become black.
So are the pellets here?
Yes, sir.
So
I
that's
can
what we
show
ought
you
to be
the actual
looking.
colors.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
what we ought to be looking at, not pictures. We should be looking at the actual materials.
Yep, I can bring those out. Yeah, we can do that. So the color palettes that have been chosen for the siding are the exact same as previously approved. I brought them in here just to reiterate those colors. I apologize.
This is what we're proving. Yeah. It ain't some colored up picture.
Yeah, but that was,
I think they're all wonderful. Just make them look.
They're all nice and brown.
That's how you can get that there, that's.
I believe that's right.
So. So, for the materials chosen, this is still cementation siding with brick. The precast is still C3 precast, as you guys chose before. The colors for the windows are still dark bronze. The colors for the garages are still brown. The colors for,
Can we go to the current, not the previous?
oh, yes, sir. The colors for all the windows are still dark bronze. The coping on the top is still the musket brown. So everything we've chosen is still the same as before. We've added a couple just to clarify some things. And again, the brick is the one that we've actually called out the actual names. We did our best to match the colors that were presented in the drawings that we have from your previous approvals. But again, they weren't specified. It was just brick 1, brick 2, brick 3. So for the front elevations of building A, there aren't any changes to what was previously approved. So everything you see here is the same. The only modification is with the door on the balcony for the exterior units.
So can you actually show us which brick is being used of all those 7 or 8 that are up there?
Yep.
You can take your microphone with you, it travels.
I'll do my best. So this is Nottingham Tudor with the Roanoke straw, which is right here. So this is the exact mortar that we intend to use. That's the brick for Nottingham Tudor. And the other brick should be Old Mill, yes, which is down here, just behind. Move this over here for now. So this is your old mill with the Roanoke straw. So it's the exact same mortar for those 2 bricks.
Can you put the siding over in front of those bricks?
Yep, that'd be H. Pewter. Skip that. This is also H. Pewter on Nottingham Tudor. And then obviously this is your precast. That's your C3 precast for that particular unit. That's a Roanoke straw. I have a sample of the aluminum if you want to see that too. It's very similar to the light if you want to see that. That's also aluminum, that's dark bronze. And same thing with the garage samples and the window samples, we can pass those around. Those are gonna be, yes, sir, those are the same for every single unit, as you've already previously approved. Should have brought the speaker, be easier to do that. So would you prefer I just run through these, present them, and then at the end, or do you want to go through each?
I think it helps. to
There's a
see
lot.
As you go, you know.
Yeah, let's go through
Pull
them.
through?
Keep,
Okay.
keep doing what you're doing.
This is the left side elevation of building A, same stone is used, aged brutal. The only extra here is, this is pearl gray, which is over here. So this is the addition, this is the lighter color on the one side by Nottingham Tudor. Same thing on the right side, same materials. It was pointed out to me earlier that I did not label what these are. Those are cementatious paneling that are the same as the dark, so it's aged pewter. So for all of those. The old mill obviously is on the foundation here and the side. The area on the back that's not seen, we have a stamped concrete or CMU. They're both going to be the same shape, so they're all CMU blocking for that and the back piece. The doors are all painted dark brown. The garage door, as you see it, is a wire mesh. That's mainly because of airflow. We have to have airflow through the unit because it is a structured parking. That's a mechanical open door. That's going to be and stainless steel color.
So the rooftop units look a little taller than the previous elevations. And I know that's set well back. We're seeing it there in elevation. How far back from the edge of the building is that rooftop equipment in that elevation?
They're centered in the in that structure, the same as what was previously presented. I don't have that with me. I can get that. Way back.
Yeah, at least 10 feet for code, but whether it's more than
It's more than that.
It's more than 10 feet.
Closer to 20. They're in the center of the building the whole way around pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's more than 10.
So when we get to the mechanical piece, I do have a picture of a similar structure of this exact same size that also has air handlers on the roof, and you'll see that from the ground level. Obviously, you can't see it. You know, obviously from before, the board was concerned about people of a higher elevation across the street from us. We tried to cluster them as close to the center of the building as we can to keep that from being seen. But with the ordinances in the county, we can't have screening on them or it actually increases the height of the building. So we've been approved for this structure, this height, which has been approved through the board here. Adding a fencing would actually change all those elevations and not make that possible.
But what about this tall part you have here? I mean, you could do a louvered screen around these things. How would it make it any taller?
The parapet's allowed to be 3 foot in certain areas. And that's what was approved through the board. We didn't want to change the look of the building too much. We still feel like the positioning of the air handler units in the center of the structure with the size that they are will make them unnoticeable. The rear elevation, very same materials as what you've seen before throughout. Again, this is the ramp going down here into the building on the back side if you want to have a reference. All the materials are still the same. Building B, very similar, very identical. Again, this is still pre-approval from what you had before. We've just isolated out the brick, isolated out the stone for what they actually call out for.
So the rear elevation doesn't show a drop off?
Not for building A.
Okay, only for building B.
So that is the actual rear elevation of building A. So it's tied up close to the other townhomes, up on the south side of the project. It's as it comes down to the creek is when it starts to drop. So you'll see it on the next picture as it falls much more drastically. So building B, the fronts, they're same. This is where you see the elevation, right? So this is the right rear side, right? So Wheelie is over here, and this is your main site. This is the driveway that people come in and see. That's by the trees back down by the creek that goes down by the gas easements. And again, this is the left side. So this is your ramp coming down into the garage entrance. And these are them together side by side from both the front elevation view and the back view, so you can kind of see it a lot better. So the front's obviously at grade where your travelway is. This is your ramp going down into your garages. And then from the back, you obviously have your grade elevation change that we're trying to address with the wall.
No, it doesn't.
I joined late, but the stamped concrete CMU was approved from the beginning.
That's what we were just talking about. We don't remember approving stamped concrete. We may have, but
It
we don't
wasn't a
remember.
material, it was, this is, yeah.
I mean, that's what got approved.
Oh, yeah, because we have.
It's
not there.
So we think just straight concrete looked not as appealing as the,
I don't
as
see
the
anything called
CMU.
out.
The
I think it's
actual
whatever you wanna
assisted,
imagine.
I'm sorry?
I don't see anything called out previously. It was whatever we imagined. Do you see anything called out there?
Nothing's called out, wasn't it down as called out? I think we probably talked about it.
I don't remember talking about it. Usually that kind of thing gets a lot of discussion because it's a
Yeah.
massive wall.
This is the rear side.
And you do see it from Wheelie Avenue.
So we're matching similar to the assisted living. Their side is also CMU as well, which is why we chose to do with that. Well, we can stick with the straight wall concrete. That's okay with us. We prefer to have the stamp or the CMU to create that texture. I think that's it for that. So that's all for the two multifamily buildings. I'm going to proceed to the 2/2 condos, if that's okay. So the 2/2 condos are located interior to the site. Obviously, to the bottom you have North Shore Drive. To the top you have Wheelie Avenue. I'm going to go through these in order. The previous approvals, as you had before you in the past, called out the colors. Again, it did not call out the brick. It just said brick 1, brick 2. Again, everything that was called out before, we're continuing with the same color palette. It's still cementatious siding, and it's still brick where we have brick. At our last presentation, we brought to you changes to the elevations so that we could continue to the point where we can have the rest of them put together and put together with the annotations and the materials that we can speak to you today. A lot of these changes, as discussed before, were because of ordinances and codes that we can't accommodate and interior obstacles that we had to address, interior architecture. All these are approved as your last approval. There were notes from before from the board to address such things as the windows on the top, on the 4th floor, to make them less, I'm not sure what the word was used, but a little broken up from before. We've tried to adhere to those comments as best we could as we annotated these with color. The first building is a building C. As you can see, I'll have to put these up here with the colors. First one is the same Nottingham Tudor, but it has the different mortar. Just want to put that up there. Change the mortar to make it match more similar to what was requested before. Cobblestone. I should probably put these back. Again, it's still the same precast. I'll put that off in the front here. So for your first unit, obviously you have this package here, and then iron gray, just this one, is the side. The second unit, the brick that we've chosen is the old mill with the Roanoke straw, so it's still the same brick type, with the chestnut brown and the deep ocean. On that one side. I'd like to note that the awnings are staying the same as before. They're still the musket brown, the same thing that you approved before with the brackets that obviously mount into the structure. Rich espresso here with the Nottingham Tudor. And then it repeats on the one side. All of the railings have been changed to the aluminum black that we discussed before. I think was your comment. They weren't, some were plastic PVC white on the 2/2s and some were black on the towns. We've made them all in the whole community this same color, so it's more cohesive. In the rears, we've done the alternation of the colors as requested previously from before we owned the project, to match both the brick in the front for that particular unit and keep with the gray and the cobblestone as we alternate. Again, all the railings still black aluminum. It's actually pearl gray. So you have pearl gray and cobblestone, which is the one you picked up. Those two in the back. The sides, we took the approach of the color on the end elevation is what wraps across from before, and then same thing with the brick on the side. It also wraps across from before.
Can you talk why you changed the mortar color on that Nottingham Tudor brick?
It was our design teams thought that it didn't allow for the brightness of the color to come to match what you guys have chose before. So we actually upgraded the mortar to make it match that particular brightness that was in the plans. We can change it. I'd love to, but it's something we can tweak if you want to tweak it. It's a small change that they thought would brighten up the brick.
Yeah, no, it does do that. It makes it, when you look at the two next, that's much brighter, which I think is a subtle change.
So that's an upgraded mortar. That's not the standard mortar. So obviously that's the standard mortar for all of our brick is the Roanoke straw. So whenever you go anywhere, the Roanoke straw is the standard. And we did that same philosophy when we get to the other brick. We can express that.
The brick you've chosen, the Nottingham Tudor, is your brick? Or was that
It's a general
previously-
shale. Yeah.
Was it
So
previously approved?
yeah. So all the brick was not previously approved. It was just brick 1, brick 2.
If that Nottingham Tudor came into my office, I probably wouldn't let my staff use it.
Right.
It really looks cheap to me. And that sandy finish, you know, you want a little nick and it tends to show right through to the brick. You've already got a corner chipped off on your sample up there. I mean, it's a classy palette mostly, but that brick, just, I'm throwing this out there. It looks like that's where you're saving your exterior skin money. I know you got a lot of it. It looks like a cheap brick to me. And all the other ones are nice, look relatively nice.
I can appreciate your opinion. I think it's actually a quite popular brick at the moment with our current community.
You're all doing standard size brick?
Yes, sir.
No,
No oversized brick.
my other question with the siding, is that supposed to be board of that, or is it a V-groove? You know what type of siding it's gonna be?
It's still all the same hardy plank siding, so it's just vertical versus horizontal. It's just how it's laid.
You can't just put two of those boards next to each other. You gotta have, I mean, that's a lap siding there, I'm assuming, right?
It's actually a vertical siding that mercury.
Okay, yeah, it's the panels. So it has a V
It has
groove.
a tongue and
Or is it
groove.
like a nickel gap, or
Yeah,
do you know what it is?
between each
Okay, okay. And you're proposing the wood grain as well?
Yes.
Not the Smith?
What does the little mother-in-law suite up on the roof do?
That's the doghouse for the entrance to the rooftop terrace
For the stairwell.
with the stairwell. Yeah. So you have a window, and then that's the doorway entrance into the rooftop terrace. So everything from here this way
Not much.
is your rooftop terrace.
You're very kind.
Is the parapet 3 foot or whatever the code requirement?
I believe it's 32 inches.
Is that what the code requires?
Has to be less than, yeah, it has to be less than 32 inches. The fall protection. I do want to point out that on the sprinkler and electrical room, there is architectural shingles on the top on that particular, which as you can see from over here is the weathered. It's your base weathered shingle. Obviously, it's architectural. It's hard to see, but it's also, yes, sir, it's also on the rear piece of the garage where you have this extra piece to turn down to get the 52 feet required for the garages. Building D, very similar color palettes in the sense that we're trying to keep throughout the community. Obviously, the deep ocean, which you've seen with the Nottingham Tudor and the old mill, the cobblestone, the iron gray, everything's still the same. It's just as they break through are put together for each stick.
So you use the same colors like you just said. The chestnut brown doesn't render in your drawing at all like the sample you've got up there. I've got a little discomfort with how dark brown it is as it sits against the reddish brick. Can you just explain your thoughts on those two sidings, the deep ocean and the chestnut brown? I like it better in the rendering, just to say again. I think it just gets kind of blown.
The rendering looks more orange.
Yeah, a little more.
Hardy
a little
doesn't make
chestnut.
an orange siding. The color palette that was chosen before is what we tried to stick with. So we did our best to match what was approved before with the colors. And chestnut brown was the best selection we could to match that particular color.
Do you think it's going to look great?
I do.
Good. That's the answer.
I do indeed.
I'm worried about those transom windows have gotten smaller and smaller, especially if you're going with vinyl windows. I mean, those are gonna be so small and just, I mean, even in the rendering, they look small. I slowly was looking at kind of all the designs, they slowly have kind of shrank just because, I don't know what your original window type, if it was a wood window, it'd have a lot less, thickness or something, but obviously you're going with vinyl window, which is gonna have a thicker, probably 3.5 inches or so. That little piece of glass is gonna be.
So we're held to a height requirement for the community. So when the original ones were brought to your attention, they used one building stick. To address all of them, we have to stay within a certain building height. So I would assume that the ones that were brought to you before probably had a taller interior floor at that particular spot, which might have made the windows look bigger than what we can show them. If you prefer them not to be there, we can obviously take them out if that's the quest of the board.
No, I like them. I worry that they're gonna be almost useless. Like on the multifamily building, they're much bigger. Is it the same vinyl window on the multifamily?
Yes, it's still the ply gem with the musket brown, with the dark bronze finish. Sorry.
And they probably have maybe a bigger deck height or something to fill their utilities maybe a little more. It just seems, I don't know, this rendering, it popped out at me as being very small. Especially in those bump outs. It just looks, they're gonna be like 6 inches of glass, which is like.
So we obviously want to make as much interior height as we can in all of our units, because that's obviously what's popular right now in the industry. We made them as high as we can make them, fitting within a few inches, trust me, which makes our production team always a little nervous.
It looks like the second floor windows are definitely bigger than those, right? These windows is a bigger window than this. This is already shrinking.
Yes.
So if we,
So basically,
we could shrink that window down 2-3 inches or something to get a little more glass.
We're gonna do a little transom with the top.
The doors.
So the difference between these and the condo flat building is those windows are casement windows on the condos. So we could do a smaller window for egress and everything. These, we're doing the double hung windows, so we have to have a certain size window there to get egress and that. And maybe that's why they got smaller.
Yeah, I guess my worry is when you stack, this is not even showing, as soon as you stack 2 vinyl windows, I mean, that's gonna be probably 6.5 inches minimum before you get another piece of glass.
Right.
So that might end up being thicker than the actual piece of glass.
I mean, we would prefer to remove them, honestly.
I like the detail, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I don't know what your egress is in there and whatnot, but that's just my.
Keep the transoms.
Keep the transom.
There you go, look bigger in that drawing. Well done.
They
It's gonna be way more vinyl than it is gonna
only
be
took me
glass.
one click.
It's subtle, it's subtle.
So the same philosophy again repeats on the back.
It's also
Again, as the board said before, you wanted to break up the colors in the back. Ordinarily, we would stick with a base
Wood
color in the
window
rears.
goes
Since the rears are open to other, fronts of other units, that's why we did the diversity again, which was a request of the board. The sides, again, match what was in the front as it carries over to the side, with ocean blue and the cobblestone.
Excuse me, could you use your mic a little more, please?
Yes.
You kind of, when your voice drops, I kind
Perfect.
of lose you completely.
Okay, I apologize,
Sorry.
thank you. I didn't want to
No, that's okay.
pop my P's as everybody does on their microphones. So again, for building E, again, this is very consistent with the color palette that we've been keeping with the 2/2 buildings. You have your deep ocean, obviously more of the rich espresso and the chestnut brown as they run through this. The backs, again, keeping with that same philosophy of, front dark, dark back. The sides, again, with the same brick and the cobblestone and the pearl gray to match the back. I believe this is the last 2/2. This is actually the one that you guys approved before with the same color palette. We haven't changed anything from before. So this is actually the one that went through. That's actually on the first page as you come through it. So this is building L.
So can you put the rich espresso color up there compared to the chestnut brown?
It's on the
sorry,
Nottingham
but
Tudor.
Yeah, leave the ocean, the blue thing up there.
Do I need to turn them sideways so you can see them for the brick too? Okay.
Oh, that's what you're saying, brown and orange.
just think that's a lot of dark brown and dark. I said it earlier, I don't like the chestnut brown color. I think it's just a muddy brown, and then the espresso doesn't differentiate from it that much. And then you're also using a dark, the deep ocean is a dark blue-gray. I understand when you're picking from these hardy samples, you know, you have to kind of go what it is, and maybe it's still the best. I just wish it was a little richer in color, the chestnut browns. And a little different than everything else.
So obviously your rears continue with the same strategy, your sides, same strategies before. So what we'll go to now are the front load townhomes, which are 3 sticks in the rear of the community. On the back side, as you can see them. This is what was previously approved, obviously with the PVC railing, a couple of the things. When we came back before, we kept most of this very similar. We had to adjust the side, as you can maybe recall from architecture with the stairs, is what we had to adjust for the back. Same thing with the rears. We had to make small adjustments to the windows to accommodate the rooms on those floors. So for the approvals, this is probably a new color that you guys haven't seen, is the khaki. So obviously we're sticking with a different palette here, and I'm trying to get the palette if I can get that. So you have dark chocolate, where did it go? Dark chocolate, yep. The strong gray. And then Blue Regent, where is Blue Regent? It's over here. Regent, and then the Nottingham Tudor with the no straw. Okay. So these are your bricks for the front loads. So you have obviously the dark chocolate, you have a Blue Ridge Regent, and the Tudor with the straw. And then you have the accent with the deep ocean. Actually, this is the deep ocean. It's your khaki. Pardon my time frame here. I'm trying to get them.
What a puzzle.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them to match. Deep ocean, pearl gray, which you have. Yep. Okay. I think that does it. There you go. So those are your color palettes as seen in the picture above. Obviously, we've kept with the same philosophy in the back. Aged pewter, which is the darker. You have the cobblestone and the aged pewter. So these are your backs. These are your aged pewter and your cobblestone. Obviously, the brick on the rear matches the brick in the front. Same railing, same coping, same windows. The rear is very similar strategy to what's been done before. Keeping with the brick on the end is what wraps around. Aged pewter, which is the back color that also wraps around. The front load, strip G. You have the same brick palettes, same color palettes as before, keeping with each of the product types. Same thing in the back with the windows. And again, the sides as they match the back.
Can you go back to the slide? Where did these bump outs come from above the garages? I look back at the previous
Yes.
designs and those were not there at all.
So the designs from before had 2 elevations approved. They just repeated. As we went through the community, we found it very difficult to put strips together for 3 sticks all together without having a 3rd elevation. I'm actually glad you brought that up. Thank you, sir. So in consistency with what was done in the rear loads and those aspects, a bay window was our obvious choice to make to add a quick 3rd elevation that would fit within the community and the design that you guys have previously approved.
I guess the reason why they jumped out at me is I don't know if I particularly like the smooth panel, and then there's the siding going with it that are, I don't know, we have tons of bump outs in Reston, I mean, they're in all the communities, usually they're either sided with one continuous, T111 siding, which obviously, wouldn't do here maybe, but, or they have one, wrap siding or something like that, I just don't know. That's why they jumped out to me, and I looked at the previous design, and I saw that they weren't even there, so then I was wondering where they came from, so. Yeah, how far do those protrude, probably just standard 2 feet?
Probably 2 feet, yeah.
2 feet. I think that's all they're allowed to protrude.
I guess the idea was to kind of frame the bump out in the smooth siding and then do the horizontal siding underneath the window as just kind of an accent panel.
Just where with all that smooth siding, you end up with all those caulk joints where you have to seal it, and it's just,
We have
it gets finicky.
We have examples of this particular bump out in another community we could probably share with you guys afterwards.
Probably get some pictures.
Yeah, if you'd like to see it. So this is the last strip for the front loads. Again, with the Dutch Ocean, obviously the Regent and the Deep Ocean coming through. We kept with the same philosophy that was obviously previously approved. Back's very similar as before. And the rear, again, sticking with the same philosophy. The rear load towns, obviously the 2 that are most important, obviously to this board, are the ones that front the road. You'll see that we kept those identical to what was previously approved from before, as obviously you guys spent a lot of time and effort to make sure that looked the way you guys obviously wanted it to look. This was previously approved. We came back, we had some small changes to, I believe, just the top. I don't have my notes. I didn't have them in front of me. Yeah, so the window grills were the change that we were asked to make from before to make sure that they were consistent and used to break up monotony of similar windows throughout the floors, which is, I think we did, as you'll see when we go to the next slides. So again, I get to change bricks for everybody. So we have Clayton Falls, which is the new one. We have Clayton Falls. We have the light gray. And the buff. Aged pewter, which is on the bluff. Chestnut brown. Aged pewter again. I think that's it, the cobblestone. Yep, the cobblestone is on the aged pewter. And the rich espresso is on the dark with the cobblestone. Another cobblestone. I think I got it. There we go. Sorry.
Well done.
So again, with the brick choices that we chose for the rear load options to match what was previously approved, our team did change the mortar to make it a more darker feel for the Clayton Falls, and obviously a more brighter feel for the Bluff, as you can see with the brighter mortar, to be more consistent. Again, we kept it with the same palette for all the hardy plank. Everything else is still the same with the aluminum coping, and the windows and the railings. The backs, again, the two colors is khaki and aged pewter, which is also here. Again, same philosophy. We kept the brick from the front and the back, and then we tried to alternate and change colors on the back to keep that back more of a less monotonous feel from the houses across the street. The rear's very similar to what was approved before. Same brick as it wraps around, same hardy as it wraps around. Townhome J, again, same philosophy. With the color palettes sticking with what was previously approved. Same thing with the rears, same thing with the sides. Building K, this is the one that faces North Shore. This is identical to what you guys had approved before. Same colors, same everything. Again, for the rears, I want to point out, this is something that I want to make mention of. We have a requirement here to do ADU housing for Fairfax County Affordable Dwelling Unit. We've submitted our ADU structure to them. They have requested that we put in an option to make them cheaper. And to do that, engineering-wise, we need to make an optional change to the window that's previously approved on this particular unit. The spacing, as you see it, won't work with the engineering that's required to meet what the ADU, the ADU board is asking of us to accomplish. So I want to apologize first off. This isn't anything that we knew coming in before when we asked for the changes the last time, and you guys made it very clear not to make any more changes. So I do apologize for this, but this is unexpected. It's something that came from the board. I don't get a vote. True. Again, in hopes that it does make the house more affordable to a family in need that can obviously live in the Reston community since it's so great. It's a small change, I believe. It kind of fits with the intentions. It still keeps the windows as we have them. We just have to space them. We have to keep them together as opposed to space them apart.
Those two windows on the top floor of the ADU are going to be together.
Yes.
They're only going to be about 3 inches apart.
So that one's going to be placed there. And that's going to be consistent with the other one as well. So we have two ADUs that are on those front sticks that face the road. As you'll see that they both are going to be required to have the same change.
You would think that the county would not want to differentiate, and it's affordable.
That's exactly, and again, as you can see, if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't know.
It's now on the back.
It just, and in the back, it's very, if you didn't look for it, you wouldn't see that it's just a window on this picture. But if you knew what you were looking for, you could see it which is the same situation that we feel this is going to be. If you didn't know you were looking for it, you wouldn't see it. So again, M is the one that's adjacent to K. This is the one that's new. The thought process was we wanted to keep what you guys had before to make sure that the look you were going for is matched and doesn't change. Same thing with the rears. Obviously, this is your ADU unit, and then the rear, and then obviously the sides match what we had before, where the brick carries around and the hardy plank obviously also carries around. So those are all the strips, all 13 of them. I appreciate your patience with me. Thank you. I think I can probably sit down, but I guess I'll go ahead and stand. So for the mechanical approvals, I wanted to go through a few things, show you a few pictures that kind of reiterate what we're trying to do and bring up a topic that we discussed briefly at the end of our approval last time in regards to where the air handler needs to be for the 2/2. So for the multifamily building, obviously all of the air handlers are on the roof. I wanted to call out that there are trains, and you'll see a picture of that. We have cut sheets for them. Also, for the multifamilies, because it is a parking garage and it needs airflow, they will have vents and fans. These are going to be obviously located in less obtrusive places. This particular shot is from the big side that falls off by the creek, and the one here is a buried option that'll have a grate on top of it to hide it, so you won't
It needs to get a
see
facial grade, the above grade.
facial grate.
Like a louver.
Something in front of them that you're not just staring.
It's not just a fan. No, it has it'll be very similar to like a dryer vent. Per se.
okay.
Yeah.
Just a little larger.
Yeah, a little larger. Yeah, a little larger. Obviously, it's going to be painted to match whatever color we have there as best we can. We're proposing it to be stamped concrete or CMU, which will be a light color, so they won't be obtrusive, or they won't be extremely obvious as you drive past them, or if you go back behind the building as the woods to look at them. Can't imagine you would, but
These are fresh air or?
these are fresh air.
Fresh air.
Yep. For, again, the air handlers on all the units are all trains. They're the same brand that we're going to continue with all the units. What you're looking at here is the 2/2 that we discussed before. We have one placed up on the roof close to the doghouse, so you can't see it from the road. As we talked about before, when you have a 2/2 building, it makes it very difficult to put both air handlers on the top because the person on the bottom owns the air handler that's on somebody else's rooftop terrace. So it's a shared common element that makes it very difficult easement-wise, agreement-wise to manage as a customer, as a person who owns the home. So we're asking for a compromise to put the one air handler on the ground. This is an example of how we do it. So obviously you have the air handlers, they require bollards. They're all going to be painted the same colors as the garage. This is actually what we've done before, so this is an actual picture. And the side picture, as you can see, is from the road looking up, in the same situation as what we have here, where you can hardly see the doghouses, much less the air handlers. So I think from a pedestrian point of view, line of sight is not going to be an issue.
This parking slab is also large enough to hold a car?
Yes.
Between the garage door and the,
Are you talking about the space here?
yeah, on the new units.
Yes.
So there's
They're
gonna be a
18
car
foot.
parked there anyhow.
Yeah, more than likely. More than likely. Unless they want a bike. There's bike lanes on on North Shore now, as we all know, so.
No, they keep those in the garage.
They keep those in the
Stolen,
garage,
Yeah.
yes.
Move your car out.
Again, all of the dryer exhausts, all the bathroom vents, all those things will be painted to match the actual color of the siding that they're penetrating, as you can see here, with the exhaust vents.
I know we mentioned potentially at last meeting, trying to get those on the side of the building, like doing, like let's say there's a row of 6, do 3 on one side, 3 on the other, where they're on the ground still, but they're on the actual side of the building versus.
We could
Right behind.
possibly look at that for the multifamily building, where you have a shared common space that runs through the center of the building. For the 2/2s, there isn't a common element between units to penetrate, so you.
It would be very difficult to penetrate.
Yeah, the joints run the wrong way.
Yeah,
Together.
so in this situation, you have people living here, and then people living here, and then people living here, and people living here. So to bring his through another owned space makes for difficult trusses. Actually makes your situation with your transom probably worse, because you get to make the trusses
Biggest
thicker.
thing is penetrating and separate.
Yeah.
Firewalls. and
Firewalls.
such. Yeah.
I mean, they make penetration details. I mean,
Right. No,
I'm a licensed architect as well, so I know the challenges. That's not the point. I guess the big thing is that those just look so.
Can you go to a site plan and remind us where
do
those
they-
will all
yeah,
be?
where do they end up?
Yeah, that works.
So these are your 2/2 units. This is the rear of the unit. So you'll have them underneath the decks on this piece, here, and then here.
And that's like one of the main entrances there.
So your main entrance is through here into the common square, and you have an entrance here to the side.
Well, they're obviously multi-fronted buildings. They don't really have fronts and backs, which we've struggled with all along. Reality is you've got a whole lot of equipment sitting right along the street.
And that's why we tried to reduce the impact to as small as possible. So we bring it as close as Dominion Power allows us to, obviously to the unit.
You looked at any sort of louvered screen or anything like the painted metal louvered screen that
So when you,
look halfway, more like siding versus,
so the clear space around the train is quite substantial when you start talking about blocking all sides, and it actually makes this bigger. We actually looked at that in Manassas. We did the same thing, and they made the same request, and when we did the math, it actually brought that way out front, and it brought it past the deck. Currently, this all sits underneath the deck. When you bring it out, the line of sight from the side actually makes it look quite large when you try to screen it. And with the fact that the trains that we have are, blend into our colors a little bit more than just a bright gray, I believe it helps.
Just encourage the owner to put a large potted plant.
Yes.
I mean, everything about that is against what we have in our design guidelines. And I appreciate everything you just said, but when I think about the people that come and want to put units in places like this that we say no to, and that our guidelines absolutely say you should never do this, and we're approving it throughout a new construction if we approve this, which to me is contradictory. We should hold this new development to the same standards that we hold our existing.
I think the interesting point there, though, is that we do approve.
Exposed mechanical units at the front door?
Let me finish my sentence. That's not the front door.
It's right. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. We do approve units at the rear of buildings. This is the rear of this building. It's not a new precedent. The other side of this building is the front. I wouldn't want this by the front door, I agree. But it only has 2 sides. There's nowhere else to put it.
I think that's really stretching it. I mean,
So, I mean, with the approach that I believe the Reston community is trying to do with the atmosphere of community and walking, and the fact that we have such a large area for community, I believe the main thoroughfare that people are going to see are the fronts of these particular units, because this is where the trail connection comes through that whole community. So as people come through there, the fronts, they have They have a beautiful black fencing in the front, every other unit. They have lots of plantings that you guys did a fabulous job at making sure it looked the best they could. So I think the backs, unfortunately, in this situation are going to be for the things people don't want to see anyway. So your vehicles and your cars, and obviously on trash day and those kind of things.
What's the plan when those need to be replaced? Is there a cluster standard that they have to reuse a train unit that matches their neighbors? Or, I know my community, there's a whole proliferation of different handlers now. It's
Our HOA, our cluster guidelines will match what we're approving here. So everything that we have, the colors, the product types, all the cut sheets, our assumption coming into this was that everything you approve is what goes into our design guidelines. I didn't know we were actually allowed to have multiple options. Is it, we can do that?
well, I've never seen a compressor unit be in this cluster standards.
Never. I mean, unless you're not allowed to have one. That's
Right.
the only thing.
Because they're always screened.
Well, not come my
We
community.
can,
they're not.
I can obviously make that concession that we'll put it in design
Maybe more of a
guidelines.
question for staff too.
That
Kyle.
train, that's what it is. It has to be that color. We can make the color and the size.
The only
requirement.
problem is train stops making that 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
And then we're doing something that's similar to.
Similar
Similar
to,
to.
and you'll have a chance to
What
take a
happened
look at it. It's the same thing that you guys did a few months ago with some lighting I saw where they don't make that solar light anymore, or they offered a solar light and it's different. I feel it very similar.
Because here, like on your rendering, you put, you show there's greenery blocking the units on the back. So I didn't jump out to me from the beginning. But, could we do forced plantings where you actually have instead of doing concrete across the whole back, you actually have a strip that people, you guys plant something and then people are encouraged to take care of, obviously, if there's a plant there. Because at least that could help, screen.
I think in the real landscape world, it just dies in a year.
Yeah, so we've
Tough place to grow
we've
something.
found,
You don't think a boxwood would survive just putting on?
Now it burns.
let me try to get to the two or
That
twos.
much
There,
concrete all the way around it. It's-
all the way, so here we go. Yeah, you're right, there does show a little
I
greenery
put a
there.
little dab of green there too if I was doing that rendering.
Well, I know, that's why I didn't see it. So that's what I was wondering.
We've found in the past with our experience with the construction of the 202 product, you guys will probably see this as it becomes more of a popular product in the Reston community. We call it the devil strip because it really, you just can't do much with it. And in our experience, we've gone through several iterations from mulch to plantings to grass to stone, and we've finally come to the conclusion that really from a maintenance for a condo, it's best to make it as
Like I said before, it's put potted plants.
non-pervious as possible.
Maintenance-free as possible.
Is there any way to utilize that bump out, roof bump out that, is, yes, obviously I mean, at the end of the day, this is a condo. So this is part of a condo association, they're gonna pay condo dues. But there's line sets around the inside of it. To get to the side of the building, you have little access panels that the likelihood of you needing to get to that line set is pretty low. You're gonna just need to get to the unit. I mean, to me, that seems obtainable. It doesn't seem like some astronomical, cost. I do know line sets have limits, but if your units aren't that wide, that I think you could potentially, look at it.
Would you want to stack them all at the end of the building?
You
We'll
would.
put them on the end, and then you could put screening around.
I think that, but then you're coming to that main drive, and there's these air handlers on the side that.
Screening with plantings around it? I mean, I don't know.
I want to put it on the roof, and I know you don't want to put another neighbor's unit on your roof, but
So,
condos deal with that all the time, with mechanical rooms on other people's.
It's the joy of the 2/2.
It's a joy of condo, it's a joy of condo living, is you still have to deal with other people's stuff.
so the side option is slightly difficult in the sense of the way that the site has been engineered, with the clear space between sidewalks and the building. It was a challenge for you guys, as I've seen in the videos, to make landscape work. To add a 3.5 by 3.5 air handler might just be the straw that snapped the campus back, per se, when it comes to fitting it in there. Way far. ahead.
That's one of their,
But you go back one real quick.
Which one?
Just go back to the site. Like these, I mean, there's no way a car is gonna be able to fit.
Not in those, not in those spaces, that's 5 feet and 6 feet. And then the only other situation where there's less driveway than 18 foot is your front load over here, which is 6 feet and 8 feet respectively. So those people won't park. It's actually a Fairfax County request, as you go through all your approvals, is that it's either 18 or less than 6. They don't like anything close to 8 because you don't want people parking this way.
People will park.
And people will do it. Yeah. I mean, if you go out the Winchester area where they haven't quite figured it out yet, there's cars parked just like that, so.
And you have units with a tandem parking in the garages on this development? Just out of
A
curiosity.
one-car garage fits one car, two
Okay.
car is side by
Not
side.
stacked.
We don't have anything in front, no.
Okay.
They're all roughly 20 feet deep. So as far as the townhomes are concerned for their air handlers, we kind of showed this before, you alluded to it. You can see them in the elevation views, kind of where they are hidden in the terrace. This is a top view that kind of shows where their placement is. There was discussion before about them being outside in an outside place. I did the measurements and they're actually the same length from you as if they were on the roof just above you. It's just a difference in location from the sides. Same thing with the gas and electric, as you saw on the elevation views. They're all placed on the rears of the units. Obviously, we have to keep 2 gases together, 2 electrics together. So as you can see, you have a gas, and then electric, and that would leapfrog throughout the community. And those are all to Dominion and Washington gas requirements. A product book. So I did a product book in the presentation that actually lists the products for everything that we have, and the cut sheets go with those. This would be what I thought would go into design guidelines to show exactly what we're allowed to do. A lot of this stuff I've already discussed in the elevation views. A couple of things I wanted to point out are the front doors, what they are, Therma-Tru, the garage door, Wayne Dalton, which you guys have probably seen the little piece that's walked past you. We've talked about the shingles. We've talked about the sprinkler rim, all the gutters, all the scuppers, splash blocks. I have all that stuff in here. Exteriors, we've already talked about most of the exteriors. Air handlers, dryer vents, we've already gone through. The doorbells, they're just the standard, obviously, white doorbell that we have.
If we're gonna go through this, we need another meeting.
Electrical features. I did change the light, and I wanted to go to that one so that you guys can see it. Obviously, these are all the materials for the, this is actually what we actually give to the customer too. So it's very upfront. Garage doors, Wayne Dalton. Obviously, this is the aluminum railing. I wanted to talk about this because this is actually something that we are changing. The previous applicant came in with a light that was black and had more light going out. We've changed it. This is more consistent with the color in the product. This is dark bronze, as you can see from up front here. It goes up and down. It's still the same lighting. It's still 120 watts as the previous light was a concern. So all the photometrics still work. It's just we feel it fits better with the community and the color of the elevations than the black light did. I can pass that around too if somebody wants to see it. Shingles, windows. These are pictures of the bricks. We'll skip through all those. That's the precast. One of the other ones is the walls for the site. I know you guys are getting tired. I apologize. I'll try to go through this as fast as I can. The previous applicant approved a Pennsylvania fieldstone, which is, as you can see right here, this was approved, and forgive me wrong, I didn't lift out today. This is what's approved for all the retaining walls and seating walls in the site. I personally felt like this was a safety hazard for any kids or somebody who was going to sit on this wall, normally in the summer. Exactly. We are going to request to keep the same feel of the stone. It's still the gray stone, but we want to change it to something a little bit more smooth cut, more square cut, so it's less of a hazard to my legs when I sit down and see something in the community. It's going to be just as you see, so the seat wall here won't have the stone in front of it. Obviously, it'll be grass, but that's the seat wall, and then the retaining wall, obviously, an example of that is on the back. Those are actually the same stones.
So do you have an actual cut sheet? I mean,
It's
there's a fine line between
limestone.
that wall looking okay and it not looking so okay, and we deal with this throughout Reston all the time. And again, we want you to be an example, not a, well, it almost fits our standard.
Yes, sir.
I like the original one better, just to say.
Okay. I can bring in that stone. They're big, to be honest with you.
They don't look natural, but they're too big.
So they're more square. I can bring in an example.
Are you serious that it's kids' legs that are driving this? I mean,
That's what I was concerned about. Yes, sir.
the world is full of rock. I mean, you know, like, to me, this looks more like what we see in Reston than that. And it is getting late, so
Yes, sir.
probably.
I don't think it's much of a difference. It's cleaner. It's still just as a clean cut. It's a straight cut. It's not like a stacked wall. It's a clean cut wall. It's a square cut, as you can see. So it lines up better. It's symmetrical, and it's smoother. Retaining wall fencing. Again, it's the iron railing, 4 foot tall for the retaining walls that have fall protection hazards, and 3 foot for the courtyard fencing for the units, as you guys previously approved. Again, just making sure it's all consistent, all black, all aluminum 3M. This is a location of where all these walls are located. The heating walls are obviously in the common area in the front, and the retaining walls are on your perimeters, as you can see from the image. The other thing is the streetlights. It's difficult to get this streetlight, particularly the beacon. This was what was brought to you before by the previous applicant, which is not consistent with what was approved in the P&Z approval. I wanted to switch back to what was in the P&Z approval, which is still a 120, 3K, and a 63K that you guys obviously just talked about probably 2 hours ago now with the previous applicant. So the photometrics don't change. They're the exact same photometrics. It's just more consistent with what we had in the P&Z. And that's just an example. That's the photometric from before. I think that's it. I want to go sit down.
Could you run through that again?
Sure. I did it twice.
You
today
two
already.
have a good time.
And
Okay. I mean, that's an extensive amount of work. There's nothing more fun than working with brick samples. I agree.
yes. And thank you, Margot, for all your help. in getting all these things out here today, so thanks.
Let's see if we've got, I mean, I'm sure people have a lot of questions and thoughts and whatever. So why don't we start with Mike this time?
Well, I'm kind of new to the project because from the beginning, so I guess if I talk about something that's, already been figured out from the beginning, I just have two things really. The units that face North Shore, I don't get why there's all this undulation of siding, brick, siding, like why, it's a premium product along that road. Why not just all brick? I don't know if you guys talked about that at a certain point, but it just, there's so much movement, it just doesn't, to me, it just makes those units look cheap, and it's just, they're not gonna be selling for cheap. So to me, it just doesn't make sense. But that's my one comment, and my other comment is, I'm not a fan of the vinyl windows. Once again, it's a brand new development. I mean, there's aluminum clad, there's nicer windows that could be specified, in my opinion, that have higher sight lines, but those are my two kind of comments.
Okay. Charlie?
My biggest ongoing concern is that fake green siding, there's not a respectable carpenter in the world who would use a piece of wood that looked like that for anything but firewood. Nobody would put a real piece of wood on a building with that grainy, that bulky finish. It looks fake. It's not what a real piece of siding would look like. It's just, not that I have an opinion, but that's what it is.
When we come back to you?
No, I got it all written down here.
Okay.
Thank you. That was a lot of stuff to go through, and I like the extensiveness of the palette because, this is a massive redevelopment, and I mean, it's all still going to feel largely maybe the same colors. I was thinking that this is how how I like having my closet at home, where you can't ever put a bad match on in the morning, no matter how sleepy you are. Everything goes with everything. White shirt, never mind. I still don't like the chestnut color and the 2/2s. I think if you were to go to a 2/2 elevation, which is just a little bit down from there, the condos, sometimes they're called condo strips. So I still think that the brown next to the dark brown, next to the dark blue on top of the light brick is just going to look heavy. I would suggest the chestnut brown go to the khaki brown for all of these 2/2 types. I'd at least ask you to look at it and consider it. I think it's going to, from what I could tell, I think it's going to be a better overall appearance. And I think, apart from major material changes, getting these color palettes right, and I liked everything else you did on everything. So which gives me confidence to tell you I don't think this is right. I just don't think it's the best that it can be. And I think you were caught in trying to match as best you could what was previously approved, which just do it what looks good. And I don't think this is the best you can do. The big concrete wall, we have to figure out what we're doing with that. You brought up the Tolleck's assisted living next door. I'd like personally to know a little more of what, because you do see these buildings along Wheelie a lot in the wintertime. And that wall is pretty massive. I would go with stamped concrete, or I would ask for a block. I just don't know what to ask for right now. I would not want just a smooth poured-in-place concrete wall. I think I probably would want it to look more like masonry. But I want it to be probably consistent with what you see next door there at the assisted living. It's just a lot of wall. I mean, it's amazing how you can get it all right upstairs and then have this massive wall be wrong and feel like we missed it somehow on our side of the table. So I want to make sure we get that right. So on the 2/2s with those exterior units sitting right there, who owns the skin of a 2/2 condo? Is it the association or is it the owner?
It would
Doesn't
be
the
the condo.
association own the roof?
It'd be the condo owns the multifamily for the 2/2. Since there's rooftop terrace, it's a common element of the upper 2/2 unit owner.
So when the roof needs to be replaced up there, who's responsible for it?
It'd be the upper.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's
you have to pay
Duradeck.
condo
It's all
fees.
Duradeck, so the top is all Duradeck.
What about the face of the building?
The face is a common element, so that would be maintenance by the condo association.
So on the roof, a portion of it is a sloped roof, so would that be,
That's-
that would be a
That's
common?
that's a common element
So I
maintained
think,
by the condo.
I just think I think our firm has done 2 over 2s and not had these units sitting down in the driveway. I think it could be up on the roof. I think it can be part of a common area up there. I don't think it has to be down there in the driveway, and I think here in Reston, we shouldn't be rolling over on this. I know it gets to what we were talking about earlier with Vantage Hill, being sure you know what the product is gonna bring before you start getting comfortable with it. And we've been showing these 2 over 2s for a long, long time. And now here we are down to where the mechanical unit's going, and it's inconsistent. I still say it's inconsistent with what Reston does. It's turning all of the streets in this development into alleyways, which maybe they were already headed that way, but to have unscreened units right out on public ways is just not, it's not creative enough. I don't think it's right.
The trouble with the lower units, mechanical being on the top, is there's no way to access it for that lower unit.
Yeah, that's the question you run into, is how does the lower unit service their unit on the roof?
They can't.
They can't walk through the other guy's apartment to get to it.
So you've never done it on the roof, ever?
No, sir.
Too bad. I don't like the light fixture, the pole light fixture there at the end is too run-of-the-mill. If you're not gonna give us what we bought previously, I think it ought to still be better than the standard shoebox replacement LED, which is what that reminded me of. I mean, there was definitely a character being developed, a sense of a village center, remnants of a village center at least, with some specialty lighting. I think there should still be some level of specialty lighting for the pole fixtures. I don't think we should be defaulting to sort of the very, very, very base standard. And I didn't like the stone, which I know you heard that, but it has a large scale to it. I don't think it looks as fine. I don't think it looks as detailed. I don't think kids' legs are going to be scarred. I think that I just think it was a more refined look previously. You know, with all of the smooth materials, and I agree with Charlie, by the way, let's let go of the wood grain, the fake wood grain. I don't, it's not helping anything, not really, in my mind. But all of the planar surfaces, you know, the stone is a nice contrast to that. You get all the smooth stuff, and then you get the finer ledge stone detail, and the larger square cut stuff doesn't have that sort of play of fine, and so I just think it looks better. But really, you know, overall, I mean, that's like 4 things I think I don't like out of a massive list of stuff. And I didn't know about the Slage lock sets, but I'm kidding. That was kind of a joke, but there's a lot of detail there. Thank you.
One point of information, just to let you know, in the location of the retaining wall for the multifamily building, there's currently a retaining wall right now. And does anybody know what color it is? It's gray. It's gray right now.
You're talking about where the shopping center's
Yes, sir.
bulwark back there? I mean, that was holding up a parking lot, right?
There's a 22-foot retaining wall that holds that parking lot up on both sides. It's going to be very similar to the size and
But
shape.
you're-
That's why I wanted to do this CMU, because it's segmental blocking right now is that retaining wall. And it's a dark gray. So that's why I went with the CMU, because it would match what that is and also kind of match the front face of the.
If we'd had a little more pictures, I mean, I feel like I have to go back out and look at it and form an opinion. That and the Tall Oaks building.
About ready to rip it down, so I'll take a picture this weekend.
Well, I mean, really, you know, anyway, to me, holding up a parking lot versus the pedestal for a new condominium building, which is already a much taller structure, we ought to get it right. And I know the assisted living facility brings its brick down there in the back.
They bring the brick down on the one side, closest to the rear, and it comes up to, almost to the front of the building, and from the front of the building around, there's a loading dock, and that whole entire area that our customers would see is all CMU.
So when you say CMU, what do you mean?
Stacked block that's, what's size is
Split
CMU?
face?
Eight by 16.
Is it split face or it's smooth?
It's not,
It's
surely-
textured.
It's
It's
like
surely-
we did it one, I don't know.
it's surely not
It's actually
unpainted.
Split face then.
It's textured,
So,
So it's surface.
which is what we were, I mean, if we didn't do the stamped concrete, then that would be our suggestion, would be to match what's there. We can do that.
I would be in
Sort of
favor
makes
of
sense.
that personally. I just think it's a step up from stamped. It's all my comments, and, I mean, I'll let go of the, I guess, of the mechanical unit on the ground, since nobody seems to be,
I mean, I'm with you.
Yeah, you don't have an option.
since we're gonna get outvoted anyway, the two of us that don't like it, but, anyway.
Nick?
And my only comment is I really wish the chestnut brown looked like the orange and the elevation, and kind of agree with Neil. Maybe a change is needed there to do the khaki, I think you mentioned, as a compromise, or, I don't know, there's no material out there, but that's the only thing I was kind of disappointed, it's not the right word, but didn't like to see that brown wasn't that kind of cool orange that complemented the blue on the elevations. That's all I got.
Yeah, obviously, it's a point everyone's obviously making. We would be more than happy to change it to khaki.
It suggested a little bit of edginess, and I wanted to compliment you. Sorry for butting that back in, but I thought all the elevations looked great. I mean, whatever reservations I had previously, you've addressed them, because nothing jumped out to me.
Ken?
Yeah, in general, I like everything. I agree that the chestnut color was sort of an eye catcher for me, so it is a shame. I don't remember discussing the stamped wall in the back ever in all of these conversations, so I too felt like, did I just fall asleep, or did we just glance over it? I don't know if I call it a showstopper, but that just caught my attention. So that's just a massive wall. I guess the only good news is it is on the back, and most of the time there is a lot of vegetation there that I think might soften it. The only other issue I had was the air carrier out there, but I agree. I just don't know what else you could conceivably do. I'm just disappointed. I know in our cluster where we don't have air handlers, but if we were to allow one under special circumstances, they do have to be screened. And I have seen some not so good or not so well screened, and others have been magnificently screened. So I would take that into consideration. Somebody just thinking out of the box to hide the box. Just think about it. That's all I have.
I just had a couple of, comments that, I think is it the old Nottingham, is that the one with the sand finish brick? Is that what you call that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will disagree with Neil on that, whether it's the color or not, but what I like about that brick is that it has a different texture. And all the rest of the stuff is pretty flat and slick, and I like the fact that that at least has some texture. So if you change that, after some of the comments you've heard, I'd still like to keep some texture in there. I personally don't have a problem with that brick. I think it adds something to the facade. The units in the driveway, I know you have to keep a screen far enough away, 3 feet or whatever it is a code requirement. I'm not sure that's better or worse than just living with the unit. And like I was saying, put a potted plant out there and forget about it. You can't put it on the roof because you can't service it if you're on the lower unit. The Colts Neck senior housing thing we did, they had an enormous wall at the rear. As I recall, I drove by it the other day. I think we asked them to cover it with stone. I think it has a stone veneer or something, because it actually is like a 30-foot high wall, but it's an attractive wall. So I think perhaps matching the split face block that's behind the fellowship house, or is it the fellowship house? Yes,
It's tall.
Tall oak structure.
Assisted living.
Might be something worth looking at, because just straight gray block or pressed concrete is, I think, as Neil said earlier, that everything else is gonna look good. And all of a sudden you get back there and it's just gonna look less expensive. The wood grain, the Reston Heights project, for example, not to pick on different ones, but their buildings ended up pretty slick because it had no texture. And all the siding, they used metal panels and all this other kind of stuff that, to me, just took away from what I would call a residential feel. It looks more like an office building kind of thing, so I'll disagree with Charlie on that. I think the wood grain is probably something you want here, because these are houses. You know, they're residential units, and if it gets too slick, then I think it loses all residential feel. The light fixtures, I agree, we should go back to what you had before, because in the little walkway that runs in between these houses are all, those light fixtures are in there. And some of those are gonna be in your front yard, if you happen to be one of those houses that's looking into that walkway. And I don't think having something that looks more like a parking lot fixture right in front of your house is a good thing, so I think I'd take a look back at what you used to have, or something a little more ornamental and not quite so utilitarian. Those are the only comments that I had, but generally I think it's a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think Neil's comment about you could mix and match almost all that stuff, and it would all work together. So I think you guys have done a good job.
Can I say one thing I forgot? Appreciate the work for sure. The bump outs, like, I like these bump outs. I just, something about those other bump outs with the multi-texture, because you're gonna have a smooth sheet of panel, and then if you do stick with those cedar grains, like, it's just, I don't know, it irks me. It just, I know you have a picture of maybe of the install, and I'm sure it looks nice, but I don't know. To me, that looks much better and cleaner and less point for water to get in the building. So.
And if I may add one thing I forgot to, I like the original stone too, sorry.
Oh, on the stone, yes.
Yes,
I would agree with that. I think the original stone makes more sense, and it goes along with it. You don't want it too slick. You want some of this to have some texture. There's a lot of concrete and a lot of siding, so if it all gets smooth, there's nothing left. Anyway. Okay, so I guess we can try to put this into a motion. Anybody have without 500 stipulations?
Only 12. No,
Only 12.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised elevations and materials as presented with the following stipulations. That the chestnut brown color be revisited, possibly changed to khaki. And if it's changed to khaki, no further approval is required on the 2/2 condo units. I don't think that combination was used elsewhere. That's a parentheses to you guys. I think it was only on the 2/2 that it was an issue. Secondly, that the lighting, proposed lighting revision is not approved. If the applicant wishes to propose another fixture, that it have more character than a simple Cobra/shoebox parking lot style. That the stone remain a ledge stone as previously submitted for retaining walls. That the large base of the condo building, the 2 condo buildings facing Wheelie, be in a stone color sympathetic with the palette, submitted to staff for final approval on that. And that's all the stipulations I have. There may be more.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
A question about the retaining wall block. Are you saying like a natural stone, or is it a split face CMU that?
It's split face.
Okay.
Split face.
Any questions? So you guys like those bump outs, those variations?
I don't,
I'm telling you, when it's installed and there's all that caulk in between the joints and crap, and the guy cuts the thing a little too crooked and there's gonna be a giant bead of caulk, it's just kind of look.
I think where we are kind of historically is the buildings and the design kind of got approve. I think we're only talking about the vocabulary of the palette at this point. We're not asking you to go back and read.
Well, those bump outs are new. Those bump outs they added today.
Not all of them are.
Well, the ones that have the issue that I'm talking about.
Duly noted.
So I don't mind putting in the motion, asking the front-loaded townhomes that the applicant consider if this is the final detail they want on these bays. I think his points, you might want to consider his points. But as far as my motion goes, I'm leaving it up to you guys.
Can the applicant suggest that you restate your motion to make it match the bump outs for the rear loads?
I'm fine with that revision. To me, they're not gonna know. To me, the bump outs are what give the character, and beyond that, how you panelize it or side it, I'm not.
It's all in the workmanship.
So for clarification, we're keeping the bump outs?
There's no question about keeping them, it's whether or not they're,
What they look like?
He doesn't like,
It's what we're
Mike
covering it
doesn't
with.
like the panels inside the,
It's the flat panel with
It's the
side
flat panel cementatious as opposed to.
Because then it's gonna be a mixture of, especially if that, I don't even think they make that flat panel with cedar grain.
We paint it.
No, I know you paint it, but I'm saying they don't make it in the cedar grain, big
No,
sheets
it's
of the
solid.
flat panel.
All the panels are not wood texture, they're solid, they're smooth.
so the cedar grain only applies to the vertical
The vertical and horizontal.
and
Right, and that's where
horizontal.
I'm saying those bump outs have some of the smooth and some of the
Yeah.
cedar, so that's why
So
I'm
we'll
saying.
change them to be all, horizontal siding.
Yeah, either all horizontal or the vertical. I personally like
But
either.
they'll still have the color change, right?
Right.
Yes,
Still
colors
same colors.
all remains the same.
The color's still the same, just.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand so we can make sure we're accurate here. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
By the way, I, as this person that seconded, I accept the changes at the last minute, so you can note that as well.
Okay, all those opposed, raise your hand. You're going with
I
it?
still don't like wood grain.
You in or not?
I'm in.
Okay,
So we're
five-
allowing the wood, no, nay,
Okay, 5 ayes, 1 nay.
doesn't matter anyway.
I think Charlie
No
was a nay
abstention,
too.
everybody voted.
Charlie, what did you do?
Okay,
I'll go. It doesn't,
Okay.
there's only two of us.
He became
that
an
don't
aye.
like wood grains.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, board.
Thank
And
you
if-
for all that.
And if anybody has enough energy to help me take stuff out the truck, I'm more happy. No takers?
We have candy.
I'll take a piece of it at this point.
okay, we have.
I know staff wants to keep those samples in their office in case they.
You want to keep them all? Obviously, you don't want to keep this.
Now we have a choice here, we have about a half a dozen. We have about a half a dozen administrative items we need to go through, or the chair will welcome the motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Were any of those administrative items critical?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I did have one thing I wanted to talk to the board about.
Too late.
Our camera had a lot of solar panels. Felt a lot of reasons